Good evening. I'll call the November 13th, 2025 Airport Advisory Board to order. Could we have the roll call, please? Thank you. Our first item is public invited to be heard. I do have a sign-up sheet. I'll go through this, and then anybody else who would like to speak is welcome to come up after that. Our policy is 5 minutes. Please give your name and address. Let us know if you're in the city of Longmont, and then direct your comments to the board. So could I have Betty Tobias? And then Sandy, is the mic hot at the podium?
Go and really get in there.
All right, perfect. Hello, my name is Betty Tobias, and my neighbors and I live in the Altona neighborhood, which is south of Nelson Road and just east of Highway 36, bordering the Table Mountain federal land in southwest Longmont. Do you need an exact address, or is that enough?
Do you need your
Okay.
residence address?
4101 Ogallala Road, Longmont 80503. Yeah, I'm here this evening to learn about and discuss the Vance Brand noise abatement policy, as well as the plan for unleaded fuel infrastructure listed on your agenda under information items. There has been a significant increase since last summer in airplanes, airplane noise, and flying in continuous circles, sometimes very low by some pilots, over our neighborhood, as well as many other residential areas in Boulder County. It can sound like a motorcycle or a lawnmower buzzing over us for often the better part of a beautiful Colorado day. This disrupts outdoor activities and can create frustration, unlike some previous years. We, our neighbors, are also concerned about exposure from leaded fuel from airplanes that has been deemed unhealthy for children, especially. To be fair, there are many airplanes originating from several airports in the Denver metro area and beyond that are flying over this neighborhood. Our intent is to try to find a way to encourage pilots, I'm guessing mostly flight instructors, but I'm not an expert on that, to be a little bit more respectful of the neighbors below. The constant circling is the most concerning. The Good Neighbor policy, although voluntary, includes flying 1,000 feet above a residential area and discourages constant circling, among other suggestions. We have been told to send all complaints to the FAA, which we feel is pointless at this point, but would really like to work with our local leaders on this matter. Thank you for your attention, and I look forward to discussing these issues.
Thank you. Christian, I can't quite read your last name.
Good evening. My name is Christian Rocken. I also live at 4101 Ogallala Road in Longmont, Colorado. And I just want to follow up on what my wife just said. We moved from Boulder to this house on Ogallala Road in 2012, primarily to get away from Boulder city noise. And in the beginning, in 2012 and many years after that, it's been a great place. I love living there. The views are amazing, and it was much more quiet than J Road, where we used to live before, near Boulder. Unfortunately, in recent years, it's especially this year and maybe last, I didn't really accumulate statistics of what's going on, but it clearly has come to the point that I'm looking forward to bad weather days, because that's when the airplanes don't fly. They're out up there on every not stormy, not windy, sunny days, and I've come now to the point when I sit outside to read a book on the deck of my house, from where I can see the Flatirons, and I really can see all the way down to Pikes Peak, a place I loved being out there. now I have to wear headphones, noise-reducing headphones, or play music all the time. It's really affecting our quality of life. And when we call the airports, everybody's always very polite and very kind. But I'm not quite sure what can be done about this. Calling the FAA, especially this FAA, I doubt will have much effect. Maybe some local suggestions would be I'm not sure if the airplanes could be, so at least to reduce the noise in the houses, to have a fund maybe accumulated or collected through airplane gasoline taxes, increased airplane gasoline taxes, that there will be a fund so people can noise-proof their houses by maybe putting triple window panes in or something. It's getting worse and worse, and eventually something should be done about this, because the quality of life, certainly in our neighborhood, but I mean I look at FlightAware, and it's all over the area, just south of Boulder. So I appreciate you listening to our concerns, and maybe we can be creative and find some solutions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sharon Thomas?
Hello, I'm Sharon Thomas. I live at 8181 North 41st Street in rural Longmont. I would like to address a couple of noise issues. I'm in the same neighborhood. I have watched a few of your meetings, and I'd just like to respond to a couple of comments that I heard in prior meetings. First of all, the people complaining about noise are not the same 3 or 4 people, which somebody mentioned in the last meeting. It's more than people just under the departure and arrival flight path. We're adjacent to open space, and it sounds like a war zone some days, with planes circling very low. And I'm pretty certain they're below 500 feet, but they're certainly below 1,000 feet. And we have graphs of this circling. The second thing that I heard was we were just called the noise complainers. And I'd like to emphasize that we're not just noise complainers. We are business owners, we're supporters of local business, and most of us support the airport. We would like to see constructive dialogue with pilots so that they understand the impact to the neighborhoods. We're not just trying to shut it down. We'd like to engage in constructive dialogue to find a solution to some of this. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeremy Cornwright.
I don't need to speak. I'm just
Okay.
attending.
Okay. Dave Kopp.
Hi, Dave Kopp, 229 Airport Road, Unit 33. I'm an officer with the Longmont Owners and Pilots Association. I've been flying out of Longmont for 25 years, both helicopter and fixed wing. And I think, quite by accident, we've got the Boulder County Assessor that's going to help with all these noise complaints, and because they just tripled our taxes. And we had a 158% increase in 2023, and it was buffered by this $50,000-$60,000 pushback from the state. That helped. But it's going to be a sticker shock when the hangar owners get their new tax bill, because now we got over a 200 and some percent increase. We're now 300% higher on taxes than Jefferson County. Anybody that knows anything about airports knows that Jefferson County is a huge airport compared to the Longmont, and we have no business even being as high as Jeffco, let alone 3 times as high. That's going to have a significant impact on evaluation, not only of the hangars, but the tax impact. And what's going to result in, we're going to lose a lot of hangar owners, and we're going to stifle growth. It could be worse. You could take a big bulldozer and put some big X's in the middle of the concrete runways, like they did in Meigs Field in Chicago. But that's as bad as it's getting, and it gets worse. Later on the agenda, we'll talk about the leases, and they're the worst in the state. Just like the fact that we are the worst airport in the state and applying for grants, either state or federal, and that is why we have a budget gap, but we also have a lot of deferred maintenance. Thank you.
Thank you. Howard Morgan. You going to speak? Yep.
Good evening. Howard Morgan, 1932 Amethyst Drive, Longmont. I've been in this airport for 28 years and watched it decline over that time. I'd like to speak on the landing fee, and that I'm vehemently opposed because it'll do a lot of damage to the airport and the city. And the city council, I don't think, has any idea what it would do. Furthermore, they have never said who they're going to charge, how they're going to charge, how they're going to collect, or anything, or even the amount of money. They have no information out, and they're getting ready to vote on it. So this body has voted against it. It passed it to the city council, and they've ignored you, so I would hope that you'd vote on it again and send it to the city council and say, hey, it's the second time. Listen up. The people that probably hurt the most are the students flying around, learning how to fly. They pay well over $200 an hour to fly these airplanes, and if we have a landing fee, the schools that own these airplanes will just tack it on and make it more expensive. You probably don't know that the cost of getting to the point where you can get a job, a good job, is probably $100,000. So the last thing I need is an increase in the cost of learning how to fly. My son learned how to fly at Longmont some time back, and flies for Alaska Airlines now. United Airlines just recently, very recently, announced that they're going to hire 3,750 pilots in the next 14 months. And if you think that's not an incentive to learn how to fly, I don't know what to tell you. So I guess my big point is we got to knock this landing fee out of it. There's other ways to make money, but the city doesn't seem to want to address that. So we need to get on the city to look at other ways to create income. And lastly, I would challenge you, the last time I spoke here, I challenged you all to go over to Greeley and see what a real airport looks like. And I will also make a challenge to you all to go to our FBO in the next few days and take a look at it. It's a homeless encampment. I mean, we have multi-million-dollar airplanes coming here with big time business people. And you need to go and look at this thing and see, would you be proud of having people come in and see this mess? So that's all I've got to say. Thanks.
Thank you, Howard. Scott Stewart.
Chairpersons, member of the board, Scott Stewart, 229 Grant Street. We were pretty critical a little bit earlier about somebody providing their exact address. If we're going to do that for one, let's do it for all. 229 Airport is not a residential address. Please apply it to across the board. heard a lot of stuff at the last meeting. I'll run through some of this. Increase in the flowage fees for fuel. You guys can get the report for how much money the city gets for fuel fees. There's like 4 months out of the year that the city receives more than $1,000 a month for fuel flowage fees. Let's be clear, the city doesn't receive it. The airport receives that money. Money never leaves the airport and goes to the city, only for services provided by the city. And we know that those services are discounted because the airport's not paying its full bill. One of the board members here suggested that the AOPA was doing a efficiency study on landing fees. As suggested by members of this board, I Googled it. I can't find it. I queried it on AOPA's thing. There's a bunch of articles about landing fees, but there's no study. One of the board members stated that landing fees would present a safety risk at the airport. My goodness, if you've got pilots that are turning off their transponders because they're afraid of, $2, $5, $10, whatever a fee is, you got a bigger problem. I would imagine there's a penalty for a pilot that's turning off their transponder. The other thing is the fees actually can be collected by, in some airports, they're actually not even collected by the transponder, they're collected by video. If that's a request, then make that a request. But, finally, there's a misunderstanding within the board that talks about this is going to be a big waste of money for the city. As the assistant city manager spoke, this is a no-cost contract. We hire a third-party person to come in here and administer this, and it doesn't cost the airport or the city upfront funds. They get a percentage of what they collect. So the idea that we're wasting money here is kind of unfounded. We need some better reports coming out of the airport. It's good to see some of the budget numbers and that you guys are starting to get now. I'm amazed that you guys haven't received them or at least seek them out, because they're out there if you want to go see them. You don't have to go to Levi to get them. You can just go to the city website and find all this stuff. Let's dig a little bit deeper. There's an FBO fee for an overnight fee. That fee is waived if you fill up with $15 worth of fuel, but additional nights are $15. Where's the report that shows how many people are staying? We're claiming that everybody's going to these hotels and they're staying forever or whatever. Let's have an honest conversation here. Present those numbers. Everybody's stuck on this $73 million economic impact study, and nobody knows what makes up those numbers. Let's have an honest conversation about what is actually happening. If we've got planes coming here and they're staying overnight for a week or what have you, and they're going to Estes and they're doing all this stuff, show it. We're not coming up with those numbers. Aspen just increased their landing fees. Landing fees are not one and done. Landing fees are a tool that the airport can use, and they should be reviewed annually, just like the budget is reviewed, and rates and fees should be adjusted annually to meet the expectation of the budget. Landing fees are a tool for the airport to use. Some years you may not need that tool. Some years you may need to increase that tool. But to say flat out no is doing a disservice to the airport. Look forward to the lease meeting tonight, the lease thing. One thing I'd like to say about the lease stuff, if you've got a condo thing with multiple hangars in there, you should have a master lease, and each condo should be a sublease of that master lease. In other words, if there's an expiration of the master, you shouldn't have a individual hangar that has a lease that's beyond what the master lease is. Thank you very much. Look forward to the call.
Thank you. Do I have anybody else who would like to speak? All right, last call. I'll close public invited to be heard. Next up is the minutes from the October 2025 meeting. Did anybody see any edits to that meeting?
I've got one. Let's see, page 4, line 31. I think that's the way you call this out. It's minor. It says fuel cells, and I was the one that made that statement. It's fuel sales details, but that's the only thing that stuck out for me. Page 4, row 31. Is that the way we call
Yes,
those
you're
out?
right.
Okay.
Page 4, line 31, sales instead of cells. Thank you. Anything else? Was that it? That was what you, okay. Could I have a motion to approve the minutes with that, that change? Dan Meester moves, I second. All in favor of approving the October 2025 minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Minutes are approved. Updates from our airport manager, who is joining us remote while he's at a conference.
You guys can still hear me?
Yeah? It's a little tinny, but go right ahead.
Okay, so I'm kind of a big open room, so it's probably kind of tinny here. Sorry about that. If you ever need me to speak up or anything like that, let me know and I'll try to adjust things. Updates this month, I think kind of the best way for us to roll into the updates, especially considering that our last meeting was so late in the month. Last month, pretty much everything in the information items is kind of things I would have updated you guys on anyway. So I think if we just kind of roll in the information items here, that's really the same topic as I did talk about. So I'll just kind of start with that. Draft leasing policy, you can kind of see that in your packets. I believe you guys have had some chance to look over that. One of the things that I kind of recommend to you is this is kind of the introductory meeting to that. So don't have to make any recommendations certainly on that side or anything. Just wanted to give a copy of that in the hands of the airport board. So you guys now have that. That document kind of came out of multiple things. We've been going down the path of looking into the leases and how we're structuring those leases. There were some questions about, hey, how do you apply your leases? Is it anything in writing? So we decided to kind of move forward with doing some policy stuff that kind of goes along with any lease that the city would do. So that's there in your packet. Would we like, I guess that's the information item. Is there any questions specifically about that leasing policy yet? You guys want to wait till a little bit later? We can talk more into that. Any input?
I'm sorry.
And Melinda's muted.
I don't see anybody raising questions.
Not raising questions? All right. We can certainly, please do. Go over that in detail. I would love to, at subsequent meetings, get deeper into that leasing policy. Vance Brand Noise Abatement Program, not a whole lot of huge updates on this one today. Apart to say that I am at the National Noise Conference currently. So I won't debrief that now. I've got a ton of notes that I'll be putting together, going through something like that and getting that back to the board later. That just wrapped up here a little bit afternoon today. So I'll share amazing. It was great. It was nonstop, great information the whole time. It was one of those times when everything applied. It was a good experience. And kind of tagged onto that, 24th of this month will be another quarterly regional voluntary noise abatement meeting in Denver. So that'll again be at Rocky Mountain Metro. We hold it there at Rocky Mountain Metro, so we can try to get the most people there, kind of centrally located. I'm hoping for another good turnout. We've been having really good turnouts at those, with just one or two individuals missing at any given time. So that'll be the 24th of this month. We'll be doing another one of those, and at the next meeting, I'll bring back information on what kind of happened at that meeting. Any input on either of those items at the moment, or thoughts, questions?
Have anybody that has questions or want to offer anything? Seeing none, next.
Okay, sounds good. The next thing I have on my information, I got engineering plan and unleaded fuel infrastructure. And Melinda, that was an item that you were talking about putting on the agenda. Would you like to provide some information or start a discussion around that?
Just to get it on the radar because the grant application that was available for no lead fuel, we couldn't apply for it. It didn't pertain to what is going on at our airport. So I'd like to get that as a permanent ongoing issue for us to do what we need to do to get that moved forward, because we got a tank in the ground and we've got one above ground and we've got trucks. I mean, we can do it with trucks, but a long-term plan, but that also includes the FBO, obviously. So just how do we move that forward?
I can provide a little bit of additional information on that for you guys. As I kind of talked about, I know I spoke about the last meeting that we are working on a draft fuel transition plan. It was my goal to have that done by the end of October. It is more or less completely done. I have one draft left that wasn't quite ready for this meeting. I do want to get through that with a fine-tooth comb once more, but in all intents and purposes, it's pretty much done. It's pretty much the things that we've been talking about in previous meetings, laying out steps for how we would want to potentially transition to that unleaded infrastructure. Of course, one of the big sticking points of that is going to be funding for getting that. Of course, the funding is there. The question then becomes the funding that is available from CDOT, what portion of that will it cover? Where else will we have to find dollars? What will the city's commitment have to be for that? All that's being fleshed out right now. I've been working with our engineers in our most recent CIP to get some stuff in our CIP for potential grant. You're marking grant dollars. I've requested the FAA to move those dollars up. I'm hoping to get it as soon as 2027 for infrastructure. We'll see what they say about that, but it has been requested from the FAA to bump things up for that. So it's definitely on our radar, and as we move forward, expect to see that fuel transition plan. As a quick caveat, we are writing a fuel transition plan. That plan is nothing that's written in stone. It's a beginning point. So as we move that forward, as we bring it to the board, we might all like it, today, and next week we decide it's awful and completely want to change it. There's nothing that says that we can't do that. So it's a very fluid document, and it's really just, it's just an exercise in planning for the future is what it is. Any questions on that?
Well, obviously, we're dispensing no lead fuel through trucks. What I'm picturing is then the above ground, like I see at Yuma. Yuma has the whole new all-in-one assembly with the above ground tank and the built-in point of sale and the ladder and the dipsticks and everything with it. It's super nice. So that's what I picture when I'm talking about it. Could I don't know what the requirements are around it, but my first question would be if the little fuel shack pump that services the below ground, could an above ground go there? We've got trucks parked next to that, but it's big. Those above ground are pretty big, but it's beautiful.
That's a question. You know what? I would say that's a good question for this board, and I'll give you some thoughts on it. Certainly, we can't have any more below ground tanks. That's no longer acceptable to pretty much any operating entity. So we will have to transition away from those underground tanks. For us as an airport, that's excellent timing. Anyway, those tanks are most certainly reaching the end of that single tank is most certainly reaching the end of its useful life. What a better time to transition to a different tank than when we have to make the transition to our any where those tanks go. As I just mentioned, could be an excellent point of discussion for this board. There is nothing preventing us from putting those tanks very close to the similar position they're in today. I've had preliminary talks with the fire department. The separations that we need from buildings is not crazy. We certainly could put it in that similar location. Other things to think about as an airport, and it's ever more increasingly becoming very common for airports to have pre-designated fuel farm areas. That might be something you want to look into, explore the idea. There's several benefits to that. You know, it's a safety-related thing. We can put all fueling systems in, you know, or in one area at the airport. You know, they can be accessed by truck. There's trucks to go all over the field. Just something to think about, something to potentially plan moving forward. But again, a good item for discussion.
Perfect, thank you. I encourage anybody who hasn't flown to Yuma, go to Yuma, because they've got the self-contained system, and it's really nice. And it's all in one. I've got Tara with a question.
The question I have is, when you talk about transition, what exactly, I mean, because we already have unleaded gas, correct? So we're not transition.
So we actually, so for one of the presentations we presented for City Council, we actually fleshed out that in 2025, of the gallons of fuel sold at the airport, I think it was 41% of them are already unleaded. A good chunk of that is the MO gas. I'm proud to say, you know, we were the first airport on the Front Range that was pretty much offering an unleaded option. That is MO gas. The other one that's kind of coming is the UL94. You're seeing more out there. That is an aviation-specific fuel. Centennial's carrying that. They've been carrying that for 4 or 5 months, if I recall correctly. Rocky Mountain Metro is putting in the infrastructure to have that, so they soon will have that. Currently, that fuel option is about the same as MO gas, as far as the paperwork and stuff you have to go through to do it. There's kind of pluses and minuses and benefits to either option. But yes, we do currently offer leaded fuel here.
But you're not trying to take away leaded fuel. You're just, it's just a infrastructure transition. Is that what I'm understanding? I'm just trying to understand what you use the word transition. We're not leaving that, because there's still a lot of airplanes that haven't made that conversion.
So in federal law actually prohibits us from restricting the sale of low lead prior to 2030.
Okay.
So it's, you know, we couldn't do that.
Thanks.
So, Levi, if I understand this correctly, mostly what we're facing is a fairly aged fleet of aircraft. You know, a new Cessna 172 is about $500,000. So I wouldn't put a number on what the average age of the aircraft is, but we're waiting primarily from STCs or approvals from the engine manufacturers to actually put no lead fuel into our aircraft.
I can give a little more insight in kind of what's going on. I'll give the 10,000 foot view, if you will, of the leaded fuel conversation. Professionals like myself in the industry, there's been a lot of focus on leaded fuel recently over the last couple of years, but people like me have been doing 15 years, so we've known it's coming. Pre-pandemic, I was working with individuals on, you know, figuring out when the initially was. So to put it in some perspective, everybody's working. So currently, you can't, there's a common misconception that it's as simple as switching fuels. It's not. And as you mentioned, it's because of the FAA. So if tomorrow I were to stick a tank out there and have it completely filled with, you know, whatever the unleaded, popular unleaded aviation fuel, individual aircraft owners would still have to actually go to the FAA for permission to use that fuel, get what's known as a supplemental package. Unlike a car, unlike your lawnmower or something like that, you can't just stick a hose in it and fill it with whatever you want. When you're dealing with the FAA, things are very tightly regulated. So they actually regulate the type of fuel that you can put in your fuel. So to run the unleaded option that we have on the airfield, those individuals that are running it have actually gone through the steps to get what's known as a supplemental type certificate. So they have gone to the FAA to get permission to run it and fill out the paperwork and pay all the paperwork fines and stuff like that. The grand hope for the unleaded fuel transition is to get a rubber stamp of approval from the FAA that says, okay, we love this fuel so much, rubber stamp, that you don't need. It's a blanket supplemental package. It just applies to everything. And it becomes that situation where now all of a sudden, you know, since they did that paperwork, they filed it, they gave it its blessing that pilots can just now go and fuel for that fuel. That hasn't happened yet. Will that happen or not? We'll see. That's my grand hope, is that will happen, because that starts making this conversation much easier. At that point, it really does become just about getting the fuel out there, as long as it's affordable and as long as it's safe.
Yeah, I think that everybody on the pilot side of aircraft is in favor of unleaded fuel.
Yes, I mean, like I said, I've been working on it for 15 years, and everybody's wanted it forever. It's just a matter of getting there and getting through the red tape and making it a workable solution.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Special shout out to Aerosphere for using so much more
Yeah.
gas. They're your biggest
so
consumer.
crazy that our local-based bicycle actually does.
Yeah.
That's actually amazing.
Special shout out.
Now, any other things on fuel at the moment?
Madam Chair, I just wanted to clarify something that Levi said. So we're required to submit the unleaded fuel transition plan by January 1st to the state. So in your next packet, you will see what that looks like. It's not necessarily, there doesn't need to be any feedback from the AAB, but we'll just make sure that it's in your packet for the next meeting so that you have it before we submit it.
And as I mentioned, its document is incredibly flexible, and it's always open for comment. So we can change that document whenever we want. We just have to have it to CDOT so that we have something on file for now.
Thanks.
Anything else on fuel? I can move forward.
Yeah, no, I've got a question. So my understanding is the FAA would like to see piston aircraft transition to unleaded fuel by 2030. Is that right?
That's their goal. That's the initiative that they're moving towards.
Does our airport have any such similar goal to transition to unleaded fuel for piston aircraft?
Yes, and that was actually something we were already moving for, but then House Bill 1235 came out, which now actually obligates us to do that also. So that's what this fuel transition plan is.
Okay. This might sound like an odd question, but I think it's relevant. Is there such thing as a leaded jet fuel? Or is all jet fuel? Okay. So when I'm looking at the numbers, so I got a report on our flowage, as I asked for, and thank you for whoever put that together. Who produced this report on the fuel flowage and the calculations on jet A, avgas, and MOGAS ratios? Was that Levi, or who was that?
So the reports that we actually get about what fuel is actually sold actually come straight from the aviation. So when you're seeing the reports, it's like an Excel spreadsheet.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at.
That's actually straight from the individuals selling food.
Okay.
And then for the record, Charles, I did the 3-year analysis. It might be what you're looking at.
Yeah.
So I did an analysis of it to get a 3-year look.
Okay.
And then Levi just did the 1-year review.
Great.
Which actually showed 41% of
Thank you.
no lead gas sales. But that was me that just summarized it to get the numbers and get an average.
Okay, so this report shows I think it was like a 36% of the fuel sold is lead-free. But I think what we're looking at, and since jets don't use leaded fuel, I believe we should be looking at piston aircraft, because that's really what the goals are, is to get piston aircraft to get to unleaded. So this report shows a total fuel, unleaded fuel, which includes Jet A, and by definition, Jet A is not leaded. So if you look at the numbers for just piston aircraft, avgas to MOGAS, our percent of MOGAS is only 12% versus like a 30 or 40%. So our percent of sales of unleaded fuel for piston aircraft is 12%. You can look at the numbers. I'm just saying that I think we should look at these ratios in terms of
piston aircraft consumption rather than putting in all the jet fuel, because that really dilutes the number. And if I'm looking, and I've always been kind of curious about this, what's our rate toward getting to unleaded fuel by 2030? If we're at 12% now, 5 years out, I think we might have a problem in getting there. Maybe not if we can accelerate some of this, but I just wanted to highlight the numbers and the ratios that Melinda put together are diluted with the jet fuel. And I think we should take the jet fuel out and just look at piston aircraft fuel consumption and our rate of adoption of unleaded fuel, and are we going to hit this target? And I realize it's not up to the pilots, and I think that's good to hear when the comments came forward saying pilots want unleaded fuel. That's great. So doesn't sound like there's resistance. It's just maybe bureaucracy of getting the pilots the certificate.
It's the engine manufacturer.
Okay.
It's engine
Yeah.
damage, yeah.
So I just want to say I think we're at 12% if you just look at piston aircraft. And if we got to get to 100% by 2030, we might want to look at another plan to accelerate that. You can look at the numbers. I mean, that's just my math on a spreadsheet, so I could be off.
No, thank you for that, those observations. And then planes that you might consider piston or turbine engine, and they use jet fuel. So it depends on the aircraft. And the lead in fuel is to lubricate the engine and keep it cool. So that's why it's not up to us to just pick and choose.
I get it.
as
And I
much
know what
as
a
the
turbine
car.
is. I know what a piston is. So
Yeah, so, but
it's
they are
all
using the
good.
jet, yeah.
Yep.
So for aircraft on the field, you're looking at, or at least aircraft that come to Longmont to refuel, 41% of our sales are no lead option. And then, to your point though, yeah, we've all got a long way to go.
Thank you.
On certifications. I see.
I just wanted to, I just wanted to remind the board member that it's the FAA that regulates that too. And so Longmont can want 100%. The pilots can want 100%. But if the STC, like Levi was talking about, is too difficult or cumbersome or too expensive, the pilots may not have a choice.
I get it.
Okay.
That's fair.
So
I just want to
it-
say we're at 12%, and we got to get to 100%, and we might have a problem. And I just wanted to highlight that right now. So
Right, and but just so that, the public knows too, that it's not something that Longmont can control.
I get it.
I certainly support as much as possible that we can do to help facilitate that change. But, like Melinda said, it's the engines that are the ones that the manufacturers, they have to approve the fuel because, I've kind of done a deep dive into it too. Like, why can't we just throw regular unleaded gasoline in there? And you would destroy your engine, and then the FAA would come back and it would be a big problem. So a lot of times the public doesn't know why there's a holdup, and the FAA is the one that regulates all of that, and it's just a big holdup through them.
great. And I've been educated on that too. It's good to hear you all say that it's not by a lack of want by the pilots. But I'm asking for reporting and transparency on how we are with a goal and how we're tracking toward that goal. And to me, it looks like we have a problem, and we ought to be transparent on that. And when we do these ratios. Anyway.
I guess. Yeah, my point was I was analyzing fuel sales, and I'd like us to be the airport that people come to for their no lead fuel. I'd like them to come for their electric. I've been harping about that for 10 years almost. So that is always my focus, is to be dispensing things that are better for the environment and more progressive than just the regular old 100 low lead. So thank you. Do you have anything else, Levi? I just looked for you in your seat.
There's some other things on that list.
Yeah.
If we're ready to move on after that.
Yep. Next up is airport authorities, and that was a question that came out of the last meeting was, could Longmont develop an airport authority to manage the operation of the airport? what are airport authorities, how do they work, what does it take? And we do have a presentation from Kyle, who is a pilot on the field, changing careers and studying aviation management, and this is probably going to be his capstone, and maybe he can get his master's with this one too, unless you're going for your master's right now, I'm not sure. So Kyle does have a presentation. It's about 10 minutes, and then he'll take Q&A afterwards.
Cool. Let me just get all set up here.
Do give us an introduction at the beginning, imagine.
Got it. Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Kyle Foley, and I'm here tonight on behalf of the Friends of Vance Brand Airport Authority. My address is here in Longmont, 2331 Santa Fe Drive. A little housekeeping before I start the presentation. We have a Q&A at the end, so if you have any questions during, just make a note and we can discuss it afterwards. So like Melinda said, a little bit about me. I'm a senior at MSU Denver. I'm studying airport management. I am a tech company co-founder, and I'm a U.S. Army combat vet. And more importantly here tonight, I'm the founder of the Friends of Vance Brand Airport Authority. Our mission at the Friends of Vance Brand Airport Authority is to ensure that the airport thrives for generations to come. We want to make sure that the airport is financially stable enough to be around for our kids and our grandkids and everything like that. Our phase that we're in right now, specifically tonight, is we want to provide the city council with viable funding options to ensure that the airport is still around. You know, many people drive past on Airport Road, drive past the airport, and they see the airport, and to them it's where the planes sleep. You know, it's just an airport. But we need to bring the community in, and this is actually what one of the other citizens was talking about today. We need to bring that community in and show them that there's a big community inside there. And that's partially what an airport authority can help out with. Go ahead.
I'm just going to make sure Levi can see the presentation.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt.
Levi, can you see the presentation?
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
Just a second.
You're good, you're good.
Give us a thumbs up.
Holding.
Sorry to interrupt your flow.
No, all good, all good.
Oh, I'm not sharing.
He should probably see it.
Thanks, I appreciate the break.
No problem. That should do it. That should do it. Let's get rid of. Yeah, I just kind of moved it out of the way. Oh, but that might. Hey, look at that.
There we go.
Cool.
Should be good.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. So we were talking about how, you know, everyone drives past the airport and they don't realize that there's a whole community in here, and that's our responsibility as being folks who operate out of the airport, is to bring the community in and show them. And I wanted to touch on a few reasons why Longmont is great. You know, we were an All-America city for 2 years, and you see all the downtown revitalization that's been going on recently, and that makes me happy to live here. But then you look over at the airport and it's a little derelict. It's like, I don't really know if I want to call that airport our own. So let's talk about why we're here tonight and why this conversation matters. I'm sure everyone has seen the chart on the right with the $73.6 million in the local economic activity that was generated by CDOT. But the airport is actually an economic driver. You know, it impacts housing, it impacts jobs and local businesses. And these are real people that have jobs at the airport, and these are real people that commute. And we want to make sure that the airport is around for them. And we've had these recurring challenges with staff turnover. You know, it's hard to manage an airport for 5, 10, 15, 20-year plans when you're not able to execute on those plans. And that kind of goes to the next bullet point. And I won't really talk about the CIP because that's been beaten to death for quite a while here. And a lot of these problems are because of our financial constraints. And that's moving on to the next slide. So this is a city-provided 2026-2030 pro forma about everyone was introduced to at the city council meeting a couple weeks ago. And you don't need to be a finance expert to know that if a number is red on something like this, it's not a good number. So this information that was provided by the city shows that the airport doesn't have funding in 2029. And that's a serious concern. Whether or not these numbers are correct, that's a concern that needs to be addressed immediately. So this is a city proposed solution where it was the landing fees. On the right side, the one thing I wanted to note here is that these numbers, and this was brought up during the city council meeting, they didn't account for the significant decrease in air traffic. So keeping that in mind, this was a city proposed solution. Let's move on to some community proposed solutions. And I want to thank everyone who's been helping me come up with some of these ideas with the Friends of Vance Brand. The fuel flowage increases. I was looking back at this a few days ago, and I saw that our 6 cents, and for those who don't know, every gallon that's sold at the Longmont Airport gets 6 cents back to the city. That hasn't been adjusted since at least 2011. It's been a long time. We should take a look at that. And also the additional south side hangars. If you look at the map on the right, anything in blue is considered open for development. And this also goes along the lines of through the fence agreements. So through the fence, for those who don't know, is a company puts up a hangar and they have access to the airfield through a door in their hangar instead of having to go through the main gate of the airport. And we could possibly allow private fuel farms there and charge fuel flowage. And for the reason that I'm here tonight, the Airport Authority opens doors to bonds and private investment, things that we can't collect now because we're operating under the enterprise system. So looking at all these ideas, let's measure twice and cut once. Let's not jump to the closest conclusion of these landing fees. Let's look at all the data we have in front of us and make the best decision. And like I said, measure twice and cut once. So I mentioned Airport Authority. This is the textbook definition here, but I'm going to give you a layperson definition. It's the Airport Authority runs the airport like a business. And what does that mean? You have a business plan, you have financial projections, you execute the business plan, and you also have future planning. And one of the cool things about an airport authority, at least the two that I like the most, is that you're able to make decisions faster. So you can make an on-the-spot decision with the authority board instead of coming back to city council and spending a few months sitting on these ideas. Also, you have direct access to grants. So instead of the grants going to the city, the grants actually go directly to the authority board and they're able to spend them immediately. And if you look at the chart here, the city owns the land and they charge the authority board with running the day-to-day operations of the airport, with managing the airport budget and the future planning of the airport. And the authority board actually has the authority to hire staff like airport management. So what can an airport authority board look like? This is just an example I have here, but one thing I want to note is the airport authority board isn't just pilots. Actually, most of it shouldn't be pilots. The whole point of having the authority board is to run the airport like a business. So you have 2 to 3 people who are appointed by city council, and that can be business leaders and professionals in the area. And my favorite part in here is 2 appointed by an economic group. How can we make the airport more of an economic driver for the city of Longmont? And these are just some examples here. And how can we bring everything together? How can we bring these community proposed solutions together with the airport authority? So we're able to enable revenue generating development like the through the fence, the TTF partnerships. We unlock capital tools like bonds and private capital. And it's an established airport focused decision cycle. So you no longer have to worry about the city council stressing over what they think is the best decision for the airport. Let's have a team of experts who know the airport really well. Let's have them make the decisions for the airport, and we can take that stress off city council's shoulders. And I like this little quote at the bottom here, is an airport authority turns feasible ideas into financially sustainable outcomes. Let's look at some quick regional examples here. Ironically enough, Fort Collins, they started their transition to an airport authority last year, and it should end around 2027. I think January 27 is when they said they'd start. They have 125,000 operations in 2023, operation as a takeoff or landing. And Greeley, who has beautiful facilities like someone was mentioning earlier, they have 120,000 operations. They're also an airport authority, and they've been around since 1978, so they're doing something right over there. It's a really nice airport. So let's talk about the path from here and how we can actually make this happen. So we're here tonight at the AAB briefing. So the Friends of Vance Brand is proposing to do a 120-day study for the city of Longmont, the city council. There's a group down in Denver, AMCG, who does these feasibility studies. Unfortunately, they're very expensive. They're $40,000 to $60,000. So with Fort Collins just finishing up their feasibility study, we figure we can borrow some data for them and come back and present this after 120 days. And then the advisory board can present to the city council, and it will go from there. Here's our ask for tonight. Give us a 120-day window to investigate governance options and report back the findings. Pause the decision. We're asking you to ask City Council to pause decisions impacting Longmont Airport's long-term direction until this review is complete. And we would like to facilitate a focused budget discussion with the City Comptroller to clarify current funding, constraints, and opportunities, because the budget was a little confusing when we read through it. So what did we talk about? We talked about what an airport authority is, some problems we're currently having, and how we can merge those problems with an airport authority to make a prosperous airport. And that's all I have for tonight, and we'll open it up for the Q&A session.
First of all, thank you.
Mhm.
Thanks for the time that you've already taken and for a clear plan. I'm not sure, I think as the board, we'd need a motion to make a recommendation to council. And they meet Monday. We're on the agenda on Monday again, so I don't know if we can get ahead of that or not.
Sure.
Probably not.
Madam Chair, just to clarify, Tuesday, it did get moved back to Tuesday, the 18th.
Oh, God.
Yes.
Y'all gotta quit moving these meetings.
Tell me about it. Sorry, thanks for, it was originally the 17th.
Yeah, okay, thank you very much, thank you. Let's do some questions.
Go for it.
Okay, I'll go first then. Thank you, Kyle. That's all really interesting information. I don't really know a whole lot about airport authorities. How long does it take, like, just say City Council said, sure, let's do this. How long does it take to implement it? And is it in perpetuity? Can you stop it? I guess I'm just still trying to wrap my head around what an airport authority looks like.
Sure. Yeah, so just as an example, Fort Collins, Loveland, that airport up there that's transitioning to, in 2027, they started theirs in 2024, but they have kind of a unique problem. They have two city councils that manage the airport. So it's a whole thing up there, which is one of the reasons they decided to move to the airport authority model. But they started in 2024. It should be done in January 2027. I don't know if they were how hard they were pushing that timeline. I know they had to do some stuff with their airport advisory board in order to move it over. So I'm not sure of how long that one in particular takes or what the normal is. But I do know that at least the feasibility study, if we were to go with AMCG, I know it's around 4 to 6 months for just the feasibility study to see if an authority board would be right for the city of Longmont.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
And I guess to answer your second question, the same folks that create the the authority board can also destroy the authority board. So that is a thing, that if city council is the one who creates this, and they're also able to break it apart if they see necessary.
okay, and so all the finances are through the authority itself. So like the city of Longmont wouldn't have anything to do with the finances of the airport. Is that what I'm understanding when it comes to an authority?
That's correct. There are a few exceptions. Since the city is technically writing the rules about the authority board, they do have the final say, so they can put something in there as like, we want some financial control or something like that. That would really depend on how the city wrote it. And
Okay.
also, I did want to mention, go back a question to destroying authority boards. That happened down at Rocky Mountain Metro a few years ago. They were an airport authority. Apparently, there was some weird stuff going on with the authority board that wasn't very ethical. So they decided to tear it apart, and now it's back with. I'm not sure if it's with the city or the county, but yeah.
Okay. And then my other question is, if we're worried about funding by 2030 and a budget deficit, what would that look like if we created an airport board,
Right.
let's say in a year?
Right.
And now we've lost that year.
Right. And that's something that we'd obviously touch on a lot in the feasibility study. I don't have the answers for that, but what I can tell everyone is that if we set up an authority board and don't change anything, the airport will still just be the way it is right now. It's really about installing an authority board and building everything from the ground up again. And part of that is reevaluating the budget and see, maybe there are some options where additional grants might come into play and stuff like that. But a lot of the financial stuff, if we did make it that fast, that would be spelled out in the feasibility study.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you, Kyle. A couple other quick questions for you. Have you guys looked at cheaper feasibility study options? You said it's 40 to 60,000. Other places that would do it pro bono or maybe prorated or less expensive than that?
Not that we found. That's a great question. That's why we think we have the chops at the Friends of Vance Brand. We have a decent sized organization already, and we think that we can pull enough information together where we do community studies at the airport itself with all the hangar owners and everything, where we can do it a lot cheaper than that and just rely on donations through Friends of Vance Brand to fund anything.
Cool. And then the second part was, is there data from other airports or other studies for this that might speed this up or make this cheaper for us?
Yeah.
Versus just spending tons of money and going in blind.
Right. So we can borrow a lot of the data that the Fort Collins Airport generated from their feasibility study. That was part of our plan, was to go up there and see what information they have that we can take. Obviously, we can't take all the information because they're 20 miles that way or whatever, but at least we can have a good idea of where to start.
Cool. All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
There's plenty ahead of me.
Hi, thank you, Kyle. I have been speaking with other airport managers on how they run their airports and become sustainable. And one thing, a common theme I'm hearing is having boards and people that are managing the airports being very objective with the goals of financial sustainability. And I am losing track of who spoke out for and against landing fees, but I would certainly want someone that's heading us up to be completely objective. And sorry to be blunt, but did I hear you speak out against landing fees in public invited to be heard?
Yes, I did.
Okay, so to me, that's a red flag.
Okay.
For objectivity. You cited Fort Collins as an example. They've got landing fees. So anyway, I just want to call this out, that whoever does this needs to be completely objective. I've always believed that, and when I talk to these other managers, they say that is paramount to running an airport effectively. So I just wanted to get that on the record.
Okay, and I do want to point out a few things about your argument here. I'm in no way saying that I'm going to be on the authority board. I'm just the one who stepped up and said, I think that this is a good idea. The person that is running the authority board it's running the airport like a business. So if that's the decision they need to make, it's not all pilots. That's a business decision. And I'm, like I said earlier, I'm not saying that I'm going to be on the board at all.
You're proposing. Sounds like you're a pretty key member of getting this off the ground. I just wanted to point that out.
Okay.
That objectivity doesn't seem to be there.
Okay. Thank you.
Hey, Kyle. Nice presentation. I'm all for that. I like the idea of, 7 or 8, 9 professionals that could run the airport as a business. From what we saw at last Tuesday's vote for landing fees and stuff, it was pretty messy. There were some people that didn't even know what they were voting for, in my opinion. And to vote for that without all of the questions spelled out showed me some irresponsibility on the city council for that. So to go to a authority, that would take pressure off the city. Obviously, they would be, somewhat oversight and keeping an eye on things. But if the authority could take off and within a few years really show that it's a good thing, the city gets paid, they don't have to worry about shortfalls. And so I personally think it's a good thing. Now, as far as landing fees, yeah, probably Greeley does charge landing fees for aircraft over 12,500 pounds, mostly jet aircraft. But Longmont's proposing general aviation, and it's not a couple bucks. It's what, $5 to $8 or something per landing. And, I think that's ridiculous. And then, we can talk about lease rates and stuff in a different deal here. But I think the authority is a good idea, and I'd be all for that.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for your presentation. Are you aware that the airport is an enterprise under the city? Okay.
Yes.
So, according to Google, Colorado Enterprise is a government-owned business, like a public university or airport. Now, I'm going to say a dirty word. It's exempt from Tabor. So, that's... I don't know too much about authority boards. I don't know if they're exempt from Tabor. So I think that's something that you should, or the assistant city manager should look at. Additionally, in Google, it says, because an enterprise's revenue is not counted towards the state's overall Tabor limit, the creation of an enterprise can reduce the amount of excess revenue that must be refunded to taxpayers, meaning more of the funding goes to the airport. I don't know how much that would affect the airport as well. There was a lot of discussion as well about our FBO, which is a private business, which unfortunately the city cannot control, and authority probably could not control it either because it's still a private business. I think the best bet is to from any source, whether it's the airport board or the city or an advisory council or what have you, have a selection committee or some sort of reach out to a wealthy individual in Longmont. Seeing how the home values are so high, I'm sure there's several of them. Do you have any comments to add about Tabor? Not necessarily Tabor, but I, ironically enough, was looking into the tax benefits that a airport authority would have, and from what I read, it is the same as the enterprise. So I'm not necessarily sure about Tabor in that case, but it's extended. There's actually Colorado law that talks specifically about airport authorities and taxes, and I don't want to misquote myself here, but I will look into that a little more with Tabor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Kyle, for joining us tonight and for your multiple public comments you've made over the last couple of weeks, and particularly taking time to prepare a presentation. That doesn't happen very often from the public, and really appreciate you kind of blending your professional interests and your educational interests for this. I just have one question here. You mentioned the Greeley and Fort Collins, Loveland airports are run on this kind of a model right now, or will run in Fort Collins, FNL's case. Do you know how common that is across the country, or is Colorado unique there? Is the Front Range pretty unique? Just what are we talking about in terms of airport authorities, in terms of their frequency of use in general?
So they're definitely not as common as your typical municipal structure, but we do see them a lot on the Front Range. So Centennial, obviously a massive airport, one of the business busiest business aviations in the country, they're run off an airport authority model. And there are a few on the western slope as well. But I'd say a majority are municipal. I don't have numbers, a percentage, but there are definitely a handful that within Colorado run off of the airport authority structure.
Great, thank you.
Mhm.
And if I recall correctly, I think there's 7 in Colorado.
Thanks, Levi. Yeah, I'm like, who's talking?
Sitting in the background there. This is intriguing. It's a fresh idea, and thank you very much for bringing it to the board. Are these people that are part of this airport authority, are they, paid individuals that would put further burden on our finances, which apparently are running out in 2029? And what's the limitation of their authority? Is there examples you can give us of how these things are structured? Because I'd be very interested in seeing that.
Yeah, so the examples, so let me think about my answer here. Can you repeat your first question, please?
I don't think I can remember it. But
That's exactly how I am right now.
Are these paid positions?
Oh,
quote
right,
unquote?
right.
I mean, is this a burden on our existing finances?
Right. So these are volunteer positions. I think they're actually paid $1 a year, but considered volunteer. And they typically, I think within Colorado, they're limited to 4 years to serve on the term. And I was actually just speaking with the airport director up at Fort Collins, and he gave me an example of what they have up there, and it was a mixture of city, and I believe he said county appointed officials, and I actually had this on one of the slides. I initially had county appointed officials in this slide here, but I took it out because I didn't think it might be applicable for Longmont. But this is what your typical makeup would look like, and it's very much centered around ensuring the future of the airport and business.
What are the limitations and/or responsibilities of the authorities?
I'd have to look into that. At
any rate, I'm intrigued by the idea, and I think it maybe has a place, but the devil's always in the details.
Totally. Yeah, I just think it's important that we consider all of our options here. I think we're running out of options when it comes to saving the airport and staying away from landing fees, if that's possible. But this is just one option in our war chest of options.
One thing that's interesting is, in some of the other research we've been doing on topics, there's a SARA, Susquehanna Area Regional Airport Authority, and they manage Capital City Airport and then a couple of other airports in that region. And of course, the Fort Love agreement is because there were 2 airports. Now there's one, but you've got 2 cities running it. So them combining for an authority makes a ton of sense to get, because otherwise they were always having to have their councils meet. It's been very difficult, just logistically, just to get things done. So it's a really smart move for them. Greeley obviously kind of started with that model. And so I wonder 2 things. When you start your study, to look at it, take a broader view of the county. The things that we do at our airport are going to impact our neighboring airports, positive or negative, depending on what happens. And so if you would take a scope and look out to a county authority, that might help. That would really only be us and Boulder. I think Erie's they must be they're on the other side of Weld County Road. I think they should be in Weld County. And then we don't have any other neighbors. The other question would be, could the authority take over the FBO? Could they purchase it and run the FBO as well? So those would be some questions I would ask when you're doing all your research, that you could look at those too and see if we could also solve the FBO situation, or just see if that's an option or what that looks like, given that it's a business.
Right.
The business of the airport is, rather finite in maintaining, dispensing, managing. And so that would broaden the footprint. You'd be managing the hangars, I take it. Yeah, so it's an interesting concept for us to wrap our heads around. So it would really be everything that happens on the ground.
Right.
at the airport with a different governing body.
Right. Yeah, and there's still a lot of research to be done with this, and as we go through research, maybe we may find that an airport authority is not the best decision for Longmont. So we'll be very transparent with that in our study that we do over the next 120 days.
When you talk, we've heard a lot about the FBO. And you showed on your little map there. Can you please bring that back up? All of the areas that can be developed. If we move to an airport authority, or even if we don't, what's to stop someone from wanting to open up a new FBO on the south side of the airport?
Right. And if you're familiar with this map, in the blue section, I believe it's, let's see if I can hover the mouse over it. This blue section right here says FBO/corporate hangars or something like that. So that is absolutely an option. No one said we can't have 2 FBOs on the field here.
We did used to have
Yeah.
2 FBOs. Thank you, Tara. Let me go.
To kind of get to your point, you are right that there are surrounding airports in the community. Boulder, I think Erie might be in Boulder County because it butts right up against Broomfield. Like if you go one step over, you're in that Broomfield airspace. So I don't know. And then you have this one. It is a bit complicated to have that. And then with the county, is it the commissioners? Thank you. The commissioners that would assist manage it if it was, I don't know their familiarity with the airports, seeing how we have council representation here, and there's always been council representation. Even the current mayor was a council representation when she was a council person. How would 3 people with no experience or representation on an airport help manage an airport authority?
That's typically where you have the at-large person that's on the authority board, where they can come in with their knowledge of airports, also working directly with the airport managers who have extensive knowledge of airports and help the authority board make their decisions. But we floated around the idea of maybe we should look at a county airport authority to manage Boulder and Longmont, but I don't want to put the cart ahead of the horse here.
I just think it's a little hard because it's 3 airports. You have Greeley. It's Greeley Weld, technically.
Right.
So it's a little bit different. Everybody keeps comparing us to Greeley, but we are a different horse.
Yeah,
we are a
totally.
different horse. We don't have that long of a runway.
Right.
We don't have a restaurant.
And we only have 1 runner, and they have 2.
Sure. Yeah.
It's just interesting to look at their total number of operations that they have and how close it is to ours. But if you look at the way that Greeley's oriented, the airport is way northwest of the city of Greeley, which helps them out a lot. And I just read in the news a few days ago that Greeley has an ambitious plan all of a sudden to be the third, something about the 3rd busiest airport in Colorado. They want to push to have more commercial service at their airport. I'm not saying that that's something that Longmont should do, but it's just interesting to see what can be done with these airports here in Colorado.
Other interesting thing with Greeley is they've exploited other sources of revenue.
Yes.
With their property, with oil. They've got some oil underneath them, and they're right next to Vestas. I don't know if they've got a partnership with Vestas Wind, but you see that when you're coming in and out. You see that wind turbine farm.
Right.
And then otherwise a lot of cows. So it is an interesting comparison. Definitely we don't have the same airport or location, but they've been making decisions and they've been stable and pretty quiet over there. You don't hear much
Right.
about Greeley as far as
Yeah,
anything going on over there.
they're doing a fantastic job.
But it's busy. If you go over there to fly, it's busy.
It's a busy airport.
Let's see, Charles.
Hi. This is an interesting one. I'm trying to be objective about this and look at this. And you're using examples of airports that I think had really clear missions or goals or directions. Now, it could be wrong. Greeley, it sounds like they want to do this. And what I'm seeing, let me back up. Generally, I believe if you want to turn an operation or an enterprise or something over to something like this, you have a good direction and you give them, this is what we want to be when we grow up. We don't have that. We have a lot of discord. We don't know what we want to be when we grow up.
Right.
Lots of disparate ideas. And I personally think we should probably figure out what is our strategy, what's our goal, where do we want to go before we start looking at turning over the reins to another organization. Because we don't know, I don't think. That's my sense. I know everybody in this, my guess is everybody has a feeling of what we want to be, but I think we need to probably get it together a little more before we start looking at turning over the reins to an organization to run this. That's my sense, is this is an operations team that cranks an operation out. And those are great. If you have a well-oiled machine, you know where you're going. I don't think we know where we're going, and I think we need to do that before we start looking at something like this.
I absolutely, totally agree with your point, and I'm glad you brought that up because that's exactly where an airport authority can help. You have a business plan going into it, and everything you just mentioned is discussed in that business plan. So, you obviously wouldn't start a new business without a clear direction of where you want to go. And I think we would be here, let's say we enacted the airport authority today, we would be here next month with the exact same problems if we didn't have this clear goal in mind for the future. So that's a fantastic point of having a clear direction. What do we want to do? What does the airport want to be?
Yeah, and I think the city needs to figure that out, and we could get some help. I know in talking to these other airports, there's consultants out there that help us get there, but those are my thoughts there. We really need to figure out, and that's part of the issue we're facing with this airport, is we really don't know. I think it came from public invited to be heard. What do we want to be when we grow up?
Right.
And it's like, geez, I don't think we're clear on that. So anyway, thank you.
Yeah, and I think that's also part of the feasibility study is not only interviewing the folks in the community and at the airport, but also just defining a clear purpose for the airport.
So I'll add that we had a master plan in 2012, and it was a 10-year master plan. It has expired. They are incredibly expensive, 6 figures to get a master plan, so we don't have one right now. That included the runway extension. That was supposed to have happened in 2017, and but things have, I don't know if things have changed, but we have not progressed through the master plan. And then COVID and a lot of things, the world started changing when it was getting close to time to get a new master plan, and they're expensive. So that is typically what drives everything, is the master plan, because that's done through the city and with an engineering firm and consultants like AMCG.
Right.
And we get that plan, and that is our book, and it is huge, and tells us what our direction is. I think an airport authority, if you're running it like a business, then you are taking the reins with that, and that would be a part of your proposal, obviously. Right. That would be part of the selling point,
right.
To establish that and see what we've got to work with. I wanted to ask Levi, do you have any questions, Levi?
Not at the moment, and of course, this is all at the very beginning of it, so anything that's, new information, any point of discussion is good. And as you mentioned, if this is something you want to think seriously look into, then there'll be more fleshing out, more research will be needed, and, it's a starting point.
Madam Chair, I do want to point out that the City Council asked for information about an airport authority board as well, so they'll be getting a very abbreviated version, like what it is and, how it works at their meeting on the 18th. In addition, the airport master plan is scheduled at this point for 2028, right, Levi? Because that's when the funds would be available. So just tossing some information in there.
Thank you. That is helpful. And then this will be, so will you be presenting that, or Levi, who will present that to council?
We'll be presenting it together.
Okay.
The City Council at their last meeting, when they talked about the landing fees and passed it on first reading, they also asked a lot of questions, as I think Commissioner or Board Member Shook just mentioned. They asked a lot of questions, so we've done our best to try to pull together as much information as possible. If you're interested in the presentation, because last time there was sort of a concern about a lack of information, the entire presentation is out on the council site right now. The packet was just produced maybe 2 hours ago, so you're welcome to take a look at the whole presentation in advance if you'd like. But yeah, it'll be Levi and I.
presentation will be from the city's perspective?
Yes.
As to what the city could embrace. All right. Well, I hope. That's good.
We'll see.
Do I have any other questions, or do you have anything else you'd like to add? You had your light on at one point, Matthew Popkin. Did you? You're good. Okay. Anything else? Anything else from you?
No, that's it. Thank you all
Thank
for
you.
listening. Appreciate it.
Yeah, and will you be able to attend council on Tuesday?
I will be there.
Perfect. All right. Thank you. Next up is another item I added to the agenda, which was electrification and sustainability planning, which was electric to support electric aviation and charging stations for the public for anything else that's run on electric and needs that. And then tied in kind of together with that was solar, even though those are two completely separate setups and engineering feats. But I just wanted to get it on the agenda so that if board members wanted to investigate anything or provide information back to the board, we've talked about it a lot. We had LPC present to us a couple of years ago, and the main thing I remember when the presentation was over, that nobody could do anything about it. And they couldn't move toward us, and we as a board obviously couldn't move toward them, that we needed the city. So that's really what I'm looking for. Is I feel like we're in a little vortex, and how do we move forward with either just a portable charging station? There must be grants for that. To get a portable charging station, you need, you've got to have waypoints for cross-country flights, and then you've got to have waypoints for refueling. And I have always wanted us to be on the map with that, particularly because we own our utility. So that's another item I've put on there, is how do we get that moving forward? What do we do? Do you have any?
Madam Chair, I do have just one small update on that. One of the things that we've talked about, obviously, is the development, that actually you just saw in that map. Part of the issue there is that there isn't electric service over on that side. And so Harold's asked me to go ahead and set up a meeting between the airport folks, I guess that's folks is Levi, and Longmont Power and Communications, to see if there's some way that we can work out an agreement where maybe the airport is able to give some of their land to LPC, and LPC can then provide some additional electrical support. So I am in the process of setting up that meeting now, and can certainly ask some of those questions as well.
I can't thank you enough. And I do know I think Boulder has a portable unit. It's on a stand and as big as a refrigerator, I think I heard. I don't have an electric aircraft, and so I don't know what it takes. But if that's something we move toward, knowing that everything takes some time, if that's something in the interim that we'd be interested in, and it wouldn't be at an enormous cost to us, I'd love for us to pursue that. Also, Levi has talked often about the solar parking, the shade, and then I know solar panels have come a long way to being non-reflective, and that was always the problem before, was they're reflective, and we couldn't have that. But if they're non-reflective, we've got a whole lot of roofs, and so I don't know how we move that further ahead on exploring what the options are, the feasibility, obviously checking in with the FAA. I have no idea if they have any feelings about that or regulations, which if they had feelings, they would make a regulation over it. So another item that I've just got it on the agenda so we can start poking and looking and seeing. And I don't feel like we've made much traction on those items, and I'd like us to move those along, especially with the changes in solar lately.
Madam Chair, I can certainly ask that as we're in this meeting. We just actually opened up our first solar garden for the city, the Illuminar project, where people can either pay into solar, or if you are in a low-income situation, you can take benefit from solar. We attach the solar panels to the top of the waste services building. So that's the pilot program for that, but I can certainly check and see what other opportunities there are.
Where is that building?
It's over on Martin Street.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah,
it's
wastewater treatment plant.
Okay, it's always been reflectivity has been the biggest issue. So I think there've been enough changes that we could revisit that.
Okay.
That is interesting. We'd love to hear how that's going, and we certainly have a lot of lights at the airport. Moving to LED lights for all of our runway lighting would also be a priority for us, and we can get a grant for that as well. I think Levi did apply for that, and we didn't get it the last time. But if we're making moves toward the availability of electric, solar, if we're making those moves, that makes us more attractive. That is one of our, what do we want to be when we grow up, is more sustainable on energy. Thank you. Mr. Potts.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I can actually clarify a few of the questions that you had, actually, and perhaps build on some of the conversations I've had with staff over the last few months. In terms of mobile charging trailers, those do exist. Centennial Airport had one brought in for the electric demo that Councilwoman Christ and I went to back in July. That was the H55 kind of a demo. It was something you'd attach to, like, tow with a pickup truck and pull right into a hangar. That's what they did. Just kind of sat there, and it's a DC fast charging port. So that's like the level 3 charging for electric vehicles that you'd have. That's what they used for their planes for that. So those technologies are known. We've seen them in the region. And I think that's something that we can explore, whether it's a physical charging station or whether it's a kind of a trailer of some kind. We can explore the utility of each of those. And then in terms of the solar and glare stuff, the FAA does have opinions on that. In short, really, it's more of an operational and like just kind of planning opinion at this stage. There are major international airports across the world, including in this country, that have extensive solar arrays adjacent to their airports or their airfields, or their landing areas. Runways. So that's something that the FAA, it's a known entity, a known quantity to FAA. They have kind of plans and steps you'd go through just to kind of make sure that it checks the boxes they need. But that's not, I don't think, anything overly prohibitive there. In fact, I think from a training standpoint, to train future pilots around those types of technologies to be aware of, actually probably advantageous if they want to kind of grow up to fly in a modern, sustainable aviation network. So the good news is there are multiple examples of airports that already have that deployed, and so we can learn from how they did it and not make mistakes.
Just occurs to me, DIA.
Yeah, DIA being one of them. I think Indianapolis is one of the earliest ones to have a solar array there, actually. They had a good site near there. Might be a few others, too. So there are quite a few examples of like major airports with jet traffic and other types. I don't know off the top of my head other kind of GA airports that have that, but from my understanding, there's no reason why they couldn't. I highly doubt we'd be the first, but if anyone's curious to see like the picture of the battery trailer or anything, like, let me know. I can't share my screen right now, but I can show you after.
Yeah, that would be something for us to look into.
Yep.
To see the cost, the availability. When would we need it? When will there be aircraft actually coming and needing it? I don't think we need it this week, but maybe by next year, depending on how many electric flyers there are out there. Next up is the rates and charges study. That's over to Levi.
And I can talk a little bit about that. Again, this is just kind of a preliminary item. We've talked about this briefly before. The council has also shown some interest now from the last meeting about potentially looking more into this, and they asked us for a little more information on that. I did a little preliminary footwork on this a few months back, getting just a few unofficial quotes from individuals. I learned enough about the rates and charges study, that we're probably going to have to go through the formal process with the city, put out requests for proposals, and kind of select a bidder for that, because it's going to be a big enough contract to have to actually do that. I just kind of wanted to start putting that on the Airport Advisory Board's radar. That's something that I know we've talked about periodically over the last year. It's something that we're probably getting back into a little bit too again, and we're probably bringing some more information to you regarding potential rates and charges.
And Madam Chair, this is something else that the council did ask us to bring back information about. And Levi, I'm sorry, it's not an RFP process for this amount of money. It would be a 3-quote. It would be a 3-quote kind of thing. So, yeah.
I'm completely wrong.
Yeah. So the estimate is about $30,000 for the rates and fees charges. Levi got a couple of quotes already, so he's already ahead of the game. But essentially, this is one way to be able to take a look at everything at the airport, because I think the council, obviously started with landing fees, but they also asked for more information about a full rates and charges study. We did a little looking into Levi's budget, and he's underspent on his contracted services. In fact, this was one of the things that I think was anticipated to be needed, so this is something that could be afforded in 2025.
Perfect. 26, yeah, we're about there.
We're there.
We are almost there. All right. Yeah, any questions on rates and charges? Yes, stand by.
Levi, when I saw you at a council a few weeks ago, I mentioned that the rates and charges weren't currently on the website. Do you know if they are currently on the website now?
I'll double check on that. They're certainly part of the record. I think there's a link to it. If it's that hard to find on the website, then we certainly.
And Assistant.
I'll make a note for that.
Okay, thank you. And Assistant City Manager, is there a reason why they were taken off the website?
The only thing I could think of, Member Gibson, is that we have recently revamped the website, and so a lot of pages were lost as part of that revamping, just because they weren't ones that had any page views. So if they didn't have page views, in many cases, we kind of set them aside until we saw whether people needed them or not. I'll look right now, though, and see if they're on there, and if they're not, they should be.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Last item is control tower, and again, that's another one I put on the agenda as a continuous item, at least until we make some progress on it. On that one, I had heard there was a form that needed to be completed to indicate your interest to the FAA in obtaining a tower. And it's the first step is you say you're interested, then the FAA comes back and starts asking questions, and you begin a process. But it's really asking that first date. And so I did pull the form, and the FAA 5100-144, it has 5 pages of explanation to fill out a 5-page form, which would seem like a positive thing. And having managed an airport in the past, I looked at it and thought, okay, this should be easy. All right. I can answer the airport name. I can get that. Point of contact, I can give them your name. I can give them your email. And then it starts to become incredibly challenging. And it does require, so this is kind of speaking to the board. I'm sure I'm not telling you anything you don't know. Speaking to the board and speaking to the public, that we've had several requests to pursue a tower to manage our traffic. And this requires far more than I would have imagined to be able to do that, including your project costs, when it would be fully funded by a grant, when you would start construction, how much funding are you asking for, is there a match, how do you want to deliver it, are you bidding it, is it phased, do you have comprehensive financial plans, is it associated with an approved IIJA, AIP, or PFC project? Is it on an approved ALP? Is environmental determination complete? Is airspace approval complete? Forecasted emplanements, square footage. Then they get into the essay portion, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 essay questions. And so it's a big lift. So first of all, I want to just go on the record as saying just to flirt with the FAA about a tower is an incredibly big lift, and a lot of questions that I'm not aware we have answers to. So given that we've got a master plan on the books, on the projected on the schedule, I would propose that we include a tower contract, FAA provided, funded, privately funded, airport authority managed, whatever it would look like, but that we do include a interest to the FAA about a tower in that master plan and in the forward-looking plans. And I would also ask the airport authority to take that into consideration that it's a whole nother beast, though. It is equivalent to the airport authority, it feels like. So it does require a whole lot of determination, a whole lot of work already done, and I did not realize it was going to be this involved. The impression I got was it was just a letter of interest, and we said, hey, we're kind of thinking about it. And no, they want to know how you're running it for the rest of your life, and you're getting married when you do this. So I bring this as a matter of interest, that I wanted to be sure it was on our agenda and that I did some research on it. Thus endeth my research. And I will put that out to the wind, that if it can be a part of the master plan, to investigate that or to make a provision for that, or if there's another preliminary plan where we can explore all of these deep questions that are asked here, to see about the feasibility. Reality says we've got a tower up the road that way, we got a tower down the road that way. We don't need another towered airport in this area. If anybody was going to be towered, it'd be Greeley probably, and they might be on the list, because as I understand, we do this, and then if all of this goes great and we get accepted, we go to the back of the line to be considered, and that line is over 100 deep ahead of us. So to say that it's quite a ways out there and that there are 100 other airports who have done all this is saying quite a lot. So I bring that up. I had it on there so I could do the homework, but I bring it up now to put it on the record that it is a substantial investment of time and resources and projections and essay questions. If anybody wants to take on a project like that, is getting their master's, getting a PhD, and want to do this would be a great topic to do it with. And just to know that getting a tower isn't as easy as people like to think it is. And for the record, most everybody knows the tower project, they had a remote tower project, the FAA did. They had one in Reston, Virginia, and one here at Fort Collins. And they defunded that. They tore down the tower, the portable tower at Reston, which was sad. And it's an incredibly cool concept. If anybody got to go up and look at it, it's amazing. And the idea was that you can roll across the U.S. and have traffic controllers at Fort Collins or Reston. And they're not only managing their airport, but when it's dark and nothing's going on, they can pick up traffic from the East Coast, say LAX, and they can have controllers helping with their camera arrays. And the array was as big as the back of that room. And it was fascinating, full control tower. And I'd love to have one. I mean, I'd love to work at that one. So Reston was destroyed, but Fort Collins, probably through that airport authority and that agreement between the two cities, paid to keep theirs, and they're doing it through a contract and running it themselves. I think that's kind of the vision that we would have for our airport, would be that it would be something we ran ourselves. If we determined, if the FAA did, put us at the back of the line, then I think you can work on your own. But again, that would take what it takes in aviation. What's the most important thing you have to bring to aviation? Money. So that's it. This is just sort of a report from the stuff that I looked into, and to get it out in front of everybody in case anybody else wants to pursue the control tower as we could put together a group, whatever we wanted to do, but it is an enormous lift. Let me take some questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for looking at that. I don't know if it's the best use of our resources and time to do that, seeing how it's so expensive already to do the master plan. To add another thing on top of that, I don't know how much it would be, and I don't know if it's really important. Although I do find it ironic that we have a FAA facility in the city, and yet we don't have a tower. Irony. They are a tower in themselves, yeah.
I talk to them all the time. Thank
And
you.
I'll interject a little bit there too. Yeah, certainly having those discussions around, or when we do a master plan, is certainly good timing. And we could have those discussions with our engineers to do an assessment prior to. But if you're doing an assessment like that along with the master plan, we just put that on the table as something which is a little more logical. And another thing I would add, if there was a decision to move forward, potentially for the board to look into this more and pursue it more, I would definitely involve the FAA sooner rather than later. remember, they're also there to help, so reaching out and then asking them for their advice too when it kind of comes to this stuff. But, certainly something we could do. So.
Yeah, thank you for looking into that and trying to understand what all of that paperwork is all about. I have flown in towered airspace and non-controlled airspace. And so my questions are kind of just sort of random. What is the benefit of having a tower? What are the disadvantages? Will it truly help reduce traffic? Some of the flight schools that complained about landing fees said that their tower doesn't let them do touch and goes because their staff at the tower is so reduced. They're not allowed to do the touch and goes at Rocky Mountain. And so, I'm just wondering what that would look like here. And then, obviously, that changes our airspace designation, I'm assuming. And then, from what I understand, right now, because we're an uncontrolled airfield, we don't have an ADSB requirement, and having a controlled airfield, you will have to have ADSB, which to public comment has said, people turning off their ADSBs, yes, you can do that in an uncontrolled airspace. In controlled, you cannot do that. So I'm just coming up with 1,000 questions that probably that people are going to continue to have. So.
That's one of the biggest things is when you look at where we sit. So we're right under the Bravo shelf. We're up against the mountains. We're in a beautiful spot, but it would be to control the day-to-day traffic, I think was the goal. That was what the interest was, to manage the day-to-day traffic. And of course, the tower can clear you for touch and go, clear you to land, clear you for the option. And I'm used to being at Metro and hearing cleared for the option. And lately, though, with staffing shortages, not so much. And then they've had conflicts, and they did just release yesterday a new plan that we all need to learn to go in there. So they're working on it because of the level of traffic that they have, because they are the second busiest airport in Colorado behind Centennial. And so it is also spacing them out, and it does put us in this line along the Front Range that is sort of naturally controlled by the mountains. If we were out on the plains and had planes coming in from all 360, that would be one thing, but we don't suffer that problem as much as somebody on the flats. So it would be to organize and better manage the traffic in the airport would be the goal. I think that's what, when the public has spoken, that's what they're looking for, is to manage who's in the pattern, who can get in and out because of our jets and our larger aircraft that need more space. And when the pattern is full, the pattern's getting bigger, and a controller can control that. And at a non-tower controlled airport, that's up to the pilots, and we can speak to each other and ask for things, but at the end of the day, you've just got to follow whatever you set yourself up for in that flight. So it is an interesting discussion, and definitely not something that we would spend $60,000 looking into. But when you do the master plan, you're going to be using a consulting company, and this stuff will probably just be right off the top of their head with their experience. So maybe a couple of lines if they evaluate it. And it doesn't have to go any further than this. My idea was to have it be an information item and to actually look and see what this form was, because I'd heard a lot about that there was just a form we needed to get it started, and I was willing to do that form. I'm no longer willing. So let it be known. No longer willing. So that was the conclusion I drew coming up with that. I appreciate you guys listening to that and all the information items that we've got on the agenda, and that we are trying to keep at the surface and keep up at the top so that we do know where we're going and do have a flight plan for the future. Next up is our action items. And the first is the Airport Emergency Plan recommendation, which was in our packet. I had given Levi a couple of edits based on my experience with emergency plans. And then this would be his final draft to present back to the city. Did anybody have questions or additional input on the emergency plan?
So I started to draft a plan, but then I stopped because I'm not paid by the city. But I have done a lot of research into this, and it still doesn't look like this plan is compliant to federal law under 14 CFR 139.325. For example, you're still missing B 4, 7, and 9, fires at fuel farms, sabotage, hijack, unlawful interference with operation, and water rescue situations. What if we have another flood? When you continue to look at the code, the federal code, this policy is just not up to it. So, Levi, I don't know if this is your final plan. I encourage you to take a look at the code before you send it to city, at least.
So this isn't actually a required federal aviation document. This is just an internal city emergency plan. So it doesn't have to comply to any federal regulations from the FAA.
But I thought you said that you were gonna use it for pilots as a quick guide in case that there was an emergency. They knew what to do. I don't know. It just kind of sounds like you're wavering on what this is and what it's for.
I'm not wavering. It's a document for airport staff for how to follow emergency situations.
But it still doesn't. No, I don't know. It doesn't follow the code. It very clearly says in the code.
Again, there's no code to follow for this one. There's no federal FAA regulations that we have to follow.
So you don't hold on. You don't want to include that information in your plan?
I think we could. So, sorry, Madam Chair, let me jump in here. So Levi and I worked on this together. Part of this is patterned after our emergency operations plan, the city's emergency operation plan. What we're finding is that we used to have big, thick documents around this type of thing, and it was unhelpful in a time of disaster. And so trying to shore these things up to make them more quick guides has been really the goal, not only in public safety, but across the city in different kinds of communication plans. If you'd like for us to include those hazards, I don't know any reason why we couldn't, but I just did want to be clear that this is more patterned after our emergency operations plan than anything from the FAA.
But when you look at other airports, they're hundreds of pages. And for me, as somebody who writes policy in my own organization, I make sure that yes, my documents are lengthy. However, I do have appendices that can be these quick guides, and you can reference that at the top of your document. That if this is an emergency, go to Appendix A. So I feel like this is it's lacking and. It's not my job to do this. This is your guys' job.
Fair enough.
See, I would add that you quoted 14 CFR 139, which is actually the standardization for commercial service airports. We are definitely not a commercial service airport. Of all the emergency plans I've written, all the general aviation airports I've worked at, this is far and away the most comprehensive emergency plan I've ever seen. And it's a very good functional one, too. So I would make the comment that this is a great plan. This is a good plan.
In your opinion.
Okay.
Great discussion. I appreciate it. And Assistant City Manager, I appreciate your chiming in here and trying to put some clarity on, I don't want to quote you, but keeping it functional and brief, because I have written a lot of documentation. I know there is a utility of a document drops off dramatically as the volume of it increases. I mean, my stuff was consumer commercial products, but you pick up a document, if it's an emergency, you got to read it. So I just want to say I appreciate the dialogue there, because they're valid points. I don't know how to resolve it, so I'll stop there. My question is there so I'm imagining I'm at the airport, or I'm a pilot, or I'm on staff, and I'm new, is there a standard format that when you pick this thing up, it's going to look somewhat familiar to somebody that is familiar with airports, or is this a one-off? Because I think modeling it after another part of the city's plan is interesting, but this is an airport document. So is there a standard format that is followed?
So no, there's not, because this isn't something that's actually required for one.
Okay.
This is us as Vance Brand going above and beyond for something that we have to do. So
Okay.
this really is us kind of, defining how we want to do this for our own purposes.
Good. Yeah. I mean, I don't want to try to ask to rewrite it. I was just asking the question. And then how, if this is above and beyond, you would think, guess that other airports have similar documents. I'm trusting you've looked at those and leveraged.
And I've written them for other airports,
Okay.
for airports too, and what you see in each document kind of, spans the spectrum. I would say this one is unique in respect that it's usable. I've seen ones that are 40 pages, I've seen ones that are 2 pages.
Great.
I think this one's an excellent balance, and I think it's been well vetted and well based on kind of the city's learning, what they've done over the years, and what's actually usable to them.
Great, thank you. And then the last question I have is on the Appendix C. I pull this up because this flow chart's kind of what I'm a visual. It's like if I'm in an emergency, I need information quick. There's a threat. It says law enforcement. And I see you have phone numbers on another page, and maybe you're saying, okay, you call law enforcement. I'm thinking, which law enforcement, what number, and then you have police department down there. That seems redundant. Can you explain that, just so I know, and then I'll stop.
And I have to look at the document I had pulled up, and now I'm not seeing it.
There you go.
Levi, I can see what he's saying as it being redundant, because we're saying law enforcement, you're defining police or fire, but really it would be 911.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, so we can certainly fix that in the appendix.
If it makes sense. Again, I'm not trying to come in and micro manage this. Just a question that when I looked at it as you guys asked for input. I'm trying to be constructive and give that to you. So thank you for listening and asking for more input.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate the discussion already from the board. As the original person who made the motion to kind of get this going, thank you, Levi, for kind of working this through. My hope is that this is an evolving document that as situations arise, we learn from and will adapt to. I appreciate the board's discussion so far, and I look forward to further comments as well. I do want to maybe encourage the board to focus on what makes this the best version of this document. If there is no legal requirement, then we're looking at what makes the most sense for our airport operations. And so that doesn't mean any of the comments that have been made have been irrelevant. I think we just want to focus the discussion on what's productive for our airport, not necessarily what's a legal requirement or not from a regulation standpoint. So just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
To your point, this is an internal document, city entity to city entity. And again, I've said it before, I had to produce it for the air show, and it's a 20-plus page document. But that's an isolated event, special circumstances, lots of souls, lots of acrobatic aircraft, and lots of potential problems, a lot of people in one space. And so as I had to create that plan, then it goes to all the other departments to be vetted, and then everybody's briefed on it. But it was, just as an example, at the air show, no matter what went wrong, it was going to be treated most likely as an active shooter situation, because that was the most appropriate response to an active shooter or an aircraft down or somebody trying to drive through the crowd. And so that was what police and fire determined was how they were going to be prepared for the worst case scenario. So it is between divisions, and at the end of the day, the thing that is going to happen on that flow chart is somebody's going to call 911, and they're going to start getting everybody lined up, and it's Levi, me, you, it's anybody. And then police, local police would come in if that's, I mean, everybody's going to come, obviously, but depending on what the problem is, then the different dispatch is going to take care of who's going to come. So at the end of the day, somebody makes a phone call to 911. Levi communicates, because he's the airport manager. If a pilot's on the field, anybody's on the field, a mother pushing a child in a stroller and sees something happen, everybody's instinct is to call 911, and that's what gets the ball rolling. And then this addresses communication, which is always back over to the city. We don't give statements. We're not experts at anything. And so if it's a crash, it goes into the NTSB. So it's really, we don't have a lot to do. We're not experts at putting out fires, containing spills, dealing with active shooters. So it just is to alert the people who are. And this deals with the communication. The other thing that we had talked about was an unknown risk, which is something we dealt with this spring and was really kind of where this all started. Unknown risk in that we had a general idea where it was coming from, but we didn't know how serious it was, if anybody had been affected. And one of the fastest things that got the message out was the FAA threw up a NOTAM, and they threw up a TFR actually over the airport, and they diverted commercial flights, they diverted everything. We had a red cone over our airport. So there was, it didn't matter what distribution list you were on, who, told you through the fence or gave you a call. When you put a red cone over us, there isn't a pilot that isn't going to see that unless he's flying an old, the Stearman or something like that, and doesn't have an iPad going. So that's really the most effective way for Levi to manage something at the airport, is to throw up a TFR and a NOTAM with the FAA. And then that protects that space and tells everybody that's looking at a map there's a problem there, and avoid it, just like a red light does out of the tower. So I think it does address that. It would be certainly worthwhile to include these other events, just to be sure we've covered the bases. And I imagine this would be a document Levi knows very well, but one day somebody knew this is going to be part of their training, is to be briefed on this and be very familiar with it. So it's not that something's going to happen and they're suddenly going to have to pick this up and figure out what to do. It'll be a part of their job. Could I have I've still got some discussion, sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I still have a couple of questions. I'm like Member Gibson. The big question for me was, are we required? So that's been answered. No, it's not required. If we can remember that this came out of the active shooter that was shooting at the airplanes, and none of the pilots knew what was happening. And so I think the reason that some of us are still having some issues with this document is what we want to see, even though it's internal to you, we want to know how you, Levi, are going to communicate to the Longmont Airport users, the pilots, the businesses on the field. We want that confidence that those people are going to be notified in a timely manner and appropriately when something is going wrong at the airport. If there's structure fires, if there's, anything, any one of these, a natural disaster, a power outage. And so as I'm looking through this, I still have questions. Key emergency responsibilities on the first page, you have airport manager or transportation planning manager in their absence, but then you have Appendix B and there's nobody in transportation planning manager. So if you're in Florida and there's nobody in transportation airport manager, who's next? And so when you have the public saying, okay, now there's a shooter, nobody knows what's going on. Nobody knows who's supposed to be letting the businesses and the pilots on the field know what's going on. And then you talk about the second page, general response guidelines, airport staff. Who is the staff? Right now, I only know of you as airport staff. And if there's more, I don't know who that is. And so I think it's the people who are using the airport that want to know that you can show them, this is my plan to let you guys know this is what's going on and how I'm going to communicate with you. And then you have assistant city manager for external services, and then you have assistant city manager for shared services under internal and partner notifications. But Appendix B doesn't have external services assistant city manager on there. So, and then I just don't see where the businesses and the pilots are getting notified on here. And I think that was kind of really what the pilot community wanted to see, and what sort of generated all of this. And correct me if I'm wrong, maybe I'm totally wrong. Yes, it is great that we have it, and I think it would give those people confidence that they are going to understand what's going on internally, that they are going to get notified for what's happening.
And Member Menz, I could, sorry. Yeah, sure. So some of this is just transitional. So the person after airport manager is vacant, so the next person is me. The assistant city manager for shared services. We will include external services now that we have someone. And we'll include the transportation planning manager because she has been hired. So this will have to morph and continue to be updated as we go. I think the important thing to note is the addition that I think Levi made based on your suggestions, page 2. The big piece, airport staff will issue a NOTAM, and airport closure will be triggered in any situation where threats to safety are unclear and unresolved. And so that's the way, that's the path. And so if the NOTAM is expired, the threat is gone. If the NOTAM is active and we have the airport closed, the threat is real, and we can give information as we're able to deliver it after. I think what was tough about the situation that triggered this was that we did not have any information from the Boulder County Sheriff. Our police department came because airport property is our police department's responsibility, but as soon as the situation went outside of the airport and into Boulder County, then it became a sheriff's office situation. And so there wasn't anything that we were allowed to share because it was an active investigation. So we're trying to make sure that we're being clearer about that, because we recognize that follow-up was very tough for pilots and very uncertain. And I know that there was a fly-in, I think, the next day, and it really created quite a mess. And so, and part of that is on the communications staff side. Communications is in my department. And so trying to get all these things pulled together, I want to be clear that the way we will communicate is through those NOTAMs to ensure that people understand what's happening right now, real time, and that when they've expired, that means that the threat is gone. At the same time, as soon as we can give out information, we want to. I know that Levi has an extensive email list, and of course, we're happy to share things that way. But it gets to be too tough otherwise to be like, oh, you look at the city's website, or look over here, or look over there. The NOTAM is the way to be able to know what's happening. And as soon as we're allowed to share information, we absolutely will. And that was the situation where we didn't really know what was going on quite yet until Boulder County Sheriff completed their investigation. And I know I was asking Levi like every 20 minutes, have they called you? Have they called you? We have to tell people what's going on.
Well,
so I certainly can respect and understand what you're talking about. Sure.
Thank you for that. And I see some of the stuff was added in there. I just think even if, you have a runner across your website, like airport issued NOTAM, and check NOTAM for any future information or something, so that
happy to do that.
People understand that there's one thing that they can go to and look for, and the people who use the airport and who have structures and airplanes and businesses on the field know that they are in some way still being communicated to, versus like we wouldn't know. We would just want to go to the airport and hang out for lunch, and there's an active shooter, we wouldn't otherwise know.
Right, because you're not looking for the NOTAM piece.
Right.
If you take a look at the communications plan, and this is the half that my team put together around who do we find to be the impacted groups. And so this was an exercise that we did with communications, because I think from a communication standpoint, not being at the airport, we were like, who is it that we would even need to communicate with? So that's where we put together that information. And then after that, you can see that there are FAQs and talking points about what's going on. And the city's website is the place to find out any information about disasters. That's what I always tell people. If you want to know what's happening around a disaster, it is the city's website that will have the most up-to-date information. But in addition, I think we talk here about implementing, emailing people, creating a press release, that type of thing. as other means that the communication team would jump in and help with once we realized what was happening and what we could release at that time.
And I don't necessarily think it needs to be, we want to know the whole story. It's, we need to know that stay away from the airport.
Right.
Kind of thing versus, the backstory at the end. And I think those people wanted to know first, like, don't go to the airport, or there's an issue at the airport, stand by. And then on the backside, get notified of the story when it's ready to come out. I think the biggest thing is just notifying the users on the field first as well.
Yes.
Like, don't come, or we're evacuating kind of
Yes.
thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we start with the NOTAM, and then we continue to broaden out from there. So it could be a press release, it can be a social media, blitz, it might be, it depends on what's happening. If we end up having media that's there, then that's when we get the public information officer included. We can even issue an Everbridge alert, which is a geographic area that texts back out to everybody's phones to say, you need to avoid this area. If it was something that would impact a full neighborhood, for example. So those are all of the different things that you'll see in the communications plan, because it depends. Our communications plan for disasters is one page, and the reason is because we never know what the hazard's going to be. I've been working in communications for over 20 years for the city, and sometimes it's an active shooter, sometimes it's a double plane crash where there's two planes that went to completely different areas of the city. Some of you may remember that. So you can't possibly plan for every single thing that's going to happen. So our communications plan is, something happens, we ensure that the impacted stakeholders understand what's going on, that we're getting people to safety, that we're finding out what's happening, and that we're posting that as widely as possible, including action steps that we want people to take.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. And as long as, from what I'm seeing, this is a fluid document, that it can continue to change and we can add things as needed. So, yeah. And that was kind of where I was like, do I want to say yes to this or not?
Yeah.
Because
It absolutely can and will change. In fact, it will change immediately because now we have some phone numbers to add.
And keeping in mind that communications has to come from the city, it has to go through them. So the two things, it has to come through the city, then they have to vet it, and they don't want to yell fire in a crowded building or tell everybody not to go to the airport, because what are we going to do? We're going to go to the airport to try to see what's going on. And so we are human. And the other thing is that I know our prior airport manager struggled to get contact information from the hangar owners and the aircraft owners, and nobody wanted to share their information. So if you have not given your information to Levi to have in his database, you won't get notified even if all this goes through. So you do have to be on the radar to be able to find out. Again, though, the TFR that FAA issued was glaring, and there was no getting around it, that there was something happening at the airport and you didn't need to be there. We don't have a sports team here. We don't even close it for skydiving, so it was pretty obvious that something was going on. Short of that, Levi's job would be to put the X's out and close the runways. In the event of an aircraft crash on the field, he'd close the airport, but you'd issue either a NOTAM or you close the airport and put it on the AWAS. So that's typically the kind of thing we're supposed to be planning for. And yet, again, back to the air show, we planned for an active shooter. So because that covers all the different risks that we had exposure to. So to Sandy's point, that you don't know exactly what it's going to be. Could be a revolt of the prairie dogs or something. And so keeping it a bit fluid, but also having a plan, or at least addressing the risks, is a good point from Matthew. And from the commercial aviation side, is to go ahead and include all the risks in there. And again, though, it's an internal document, city to city, city employee to the city, and that the city is always going to manage the communications because they're going to have the official word, much like the NTSB. So if we had a plane crash yesterday and multiple fatalities and property damage and all sorts of things, the city would probably say an airplane went down, some people died, there was some stuff wrecked, but the NTSB is who we wait for to find out what happened, and that's 2 years. So we live in that environment. So this is more, at that time, nobody knew that was on the field what was going on, and nobody knew what to do about their plans, and they fly in and things like that. So we're taking a SWAT at what was a complicated situation for us when this happened, and trying to have a plan for the future. So if we are ready to make a motion to move this document forward, we can. If we're not, we can push till next month. Is the city also, is this in anything else that they're looking at, or with you, Levi? Is there potentially more to come?
So this is
At the moment, and again, this is a document that can be, we can always add and change to it and change, so of course, phone numbers have changed, things can be added in the future too.
Plus, from a communication standpoint, I should tell you that, I certainly do apologize around the whole situation for people, because people did not know what was going on. Communications did not know that there had been a NOTAM that had been put out, so we didn't have any idea what had gone out there. So it was very confusing. And so I'm really hopeful that this document will help us all internally to be able to get on the same page. The communications team would like to practice this once it is passed. So that is one of the things that we'll be doing. We'll be inviting Levi to come and be our test case, because most of our communications team is pretty new and have not been through a serious disaster. So, we practice all the time for our emergency planning team, but we're going to actually take this one and use this as our communications practice, because there was a lot of confusion during that situation. And I know certainly from my perspective, we could have done things a lot better, and we hope to.
To everybody's credit too, it happened on a Friday night. I think it was a beautiful night. I think I was going to something outside, so it was after hours and at an odd time, and not during a typically busy period for the airport. The biggest thing was the EAA fly-in the next day. That was the one that was impacted the most, and then just trying to figure out for business the next morning, did we still have a threat or not? So that, I think, in 2020 vision, now that would be a priority to address some of those concerns sooner than later than we have in the past. Let me take math.
Obviously, I can't make motions here, so I just wanted to offer to the board in case this was helpful. I know some people are mulling over a few of the potential changes. If there are some of those phone number updates or other small pieces that you would like to see, it's always an option to accept or approve something with a motion, conditional upon some of those types of updates, if that helps people think about how they might want to approach this. Just wanted to put that on the table. Of course, you can do whatever you want.
And what I have on the list is to add additional hazards per the commercial requirements, plus the phone number, the updated phone numbers.
It sounds like this plan could be changed, and more information added to the document as time goes on. I was basically going to say the same thing. Can't we vote on this thing? Or I'll just make a motion that we approve the document as written with potential changes as needed.
Could I get a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Dan Meester. Could we vote? Or actually, we need some discussion. Hang on. Let's see here. You are going to be 6.
Quick question. How tough is it to make changes? Sounds like, Levi, you're pretty amiable about this, if it's reasonable, but this doesn't have to go through an act of Congress. It's probably a bad expression right now, but it's pretty low threshold to get some changes made. Yeah.
From a practical standpoint, it is a non-FAA required document that we're doing again for our own benefit. So, honestly, a Word document, I can make the changes. Of course, I'm going to be communicating with the city and the team around there to make sure that those are watchable, but we can just make them that way.
Great, thank you.
Assistant City Manager Cedar, when you do your run through of this and you update it based on the outcome, will you please give it back to us just so we can have the copy that's hey, these are the changes we made based on the scenario, the drills that we did? That would, I would love to see it and how that scenario ended up.
Yeah, I would be happy to. I think it will be interesting because the communications team, like I said, they're pretty new group, and so this will be very helpful. I'll try to make up something not too.
Yeah, thanks.
We'll see.
given discussion, could we go ahead and vote if we can approve the current Vance Brand Airport emergency plan by the City of Longmont for Levi, our airport manager, to execute, and that it's a living document and subject to a fire drill test and change? Could I get a vote on whether we can approve this to go forward? All in favor would say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed would say nay. All right. Noted that Board Member Gibson is nay, and the rest of the board is in favor. So that passes. Next up is AAB applicants and recommendations. We conducted the interviews. We have 3 seats open on the board, and most people here know you have to apply in the city opens the boards in October, and sometimes they open them in April to May if there's shortages on boards. So the period came open for people to apply. We were given 4 applications to interview. Those were the 4 people who had applied. We have 3 seats open, and we did the 4 interviews last week, and we had a mixture. I gave the information to Kayla earlier today. I left Malcolm off, and I gave her the information I had, but Malcolm was also on that interview board. So we conducted the interviews and completed those and completed the rubric that we were given by the city. And shortly after we got done putting all the numbers together and getting all the input, our 4th candidate withdrew his application. So we have 3 applicants for 3 vacant positions. So the based on the interviews, and we had 4 applicants, which were Tara Menza, Dan Meester, Jeremy Kornreich, and David Wimmert. David withdrew his application. So the board hereby would recommend, I need to make a motion that the board would recommend for the January 2026 board positions that are open, Tara Menza, Dan Meester, and Jeremy Kornreich. I'd make a motion that we present our 3 candidates for our 3 open positions. May I get a second? Seconded by Malcolm Dean. And is there any discussion?
Yes, I was very surprised with what you just said and disappointed that I was not even informed of the interviews or had a chance to weigh in. So I don't know what the process is. I'm trying to understand that, but I would think board members would at least be informed of candidates and have an opportunity to weigh in. And this is the second time this has happened since I've been on this board. So what's going on with the process of interviewing and appointing or making recommendations for candidates?
So you could express your interest in participating in that, knowing that our seats expire. And then just to let you know, we get this questionnaire that is all the questions that we can ask. And they are, what is your experience in aviation and airports? What is your understanding of how they're run? How do you feel about this airport? Do you do business? Are you a tenant? Can you commit to the meetings? Do you have a vision? And we're tasked with representing the best interests of the airport. I think you went through these questions as well. So it's always the same question.
As a candidate, yes.
Yeah.
So
it's
what
always the
is
same.
the process for board members being informed that interviews will be coming up?
It's a known factor that people apply in October, and we're presented with who applied by November. And then we don't have very long because they are going to be interviewed by City Council next Saturday. So we got our packet. We worked to get them done last week so that we could go ahead, and knowing that we had more candidates than seats available, that was the urgency to get it. Well, there wasn't any urgency, that was just the time frame to get the interviews done. And again, the interview process is incredibly sterile, and it really doesn't matter who participates, it was who's available. And several people stepped up and said that they would be available to do these. They were recorded, they'll be available. The city put some, we have a airport information section with the city, so the interviews were recorded and they'll be out there. And but I can't stress enough that it's a very curated process, and then we have a rating scale, just like we did when you were interviewed. And if you'd like to be a part of that, hopefully we'll stay full for this year and we won't need midterms, but if we have midterms, that would be in June. We'd do those, or May probably. And then this process comes around again in October when people apply. And then when your term is up, if you've served one term, you can apply for a second term. And then you go through this process again. And so 2 of our members were asking to return for a second term. And then Mr. Shook is done, and he's moving. And then our 4th candidate withdrew.
So how were the other board members that were on the interview committee informed of their opportunity to interview?
They volunteered.
So
Because everybody knew it was coming up. They knew this, we go through this process every year.
were they asked to interview, or were they in any way informed of these interviews by anybody on the board? Or was it?
Yeah, so Levi and I we are tasked with doing the interviews, but we need a third person, and we started down the list with who was available. So Malcolm has a more flexible schedule with work, and Dan participated in interviewing David Wimmert, and so we crossed up and managed to get them done in back-to-back sessions in one day.
So you
Those
reached
are
out to
logistics.
them?
No, they volunteered. They said they were available.
So there was no proactive reaching out to board members to interview? They
I don't
stepped
think
up?
so. Mm-mm.
Well, you were leading it, right?
No, I do it with Levi.
Okay.
It's with Levi. And through the city gives us who's applied and gives us their packet. And then we have a deadline of when they have to get done.
Yeah, I'm not sure does that follow procedure, that board members are not informed? What is the procedure there? Because this is the second time we've had interviews, and I've been not informed of any of this process. It just happened.
Let me bring up what, let's see here. I'm assuming at some point there was a motion on the board that, said that we're going to have interviews separately, which is allowed by the council rules of procedure.
Yeah,
But
that's
let me find it.
I
exactly.
never heard that.
It's in our bylaws.
Right, but I don't think it was, okay.
Your question is, how were they chosen?
Right. And why weren't all the board members given an equal opportunity to be on these interviews?
So here's the answer about the process, and this is from the city clerk's office. The Airport Advisory Board will conduct interviews of all applicants and then make a recommendation to the city council, who then conducts interviews of those recommended. Council makes board appointments on December 16th at their final meeting of 2026. Interviews shall be facilitated by the staff liaison, that's Levi. Final recommendations must be made by the board as a whole. Boards, however, may establish a nominating committee of 2 members facilitated by the staff liaison to conduct interviews on behalf of the board. Final recommendations shall still be approved by the full board. That's why it's here today. The process for board interviews is defined under the council's rules of procedure. Under the council rules
Yeah,
of procedure.
I see.
So I assume that there must have been some sort of a nominating committee created, but I'm not sure how that happens.
Yeah, I was not aware of that either. I just see a problem here where it's not a fair and open process, 2 times in a row. And I don't think it follows these bylaws.
I suppose, and Sandy, correct me if I'm wrong, is this something that the board wanted to change? They could change the bylaws and make different rules for them?
Yeah, I guess I'm not totally sure how the bylaws actually fit in. That's the piece that I'm sort of missing. The council rules of procedure say that you can have a nominating committee to be able to do that. It sounds like that was created between
was it?
Melinda, Dan, and Malcolm, is what it sounds like.
Was it?
No, we had multiple people. So we operate under the airport manager as the city staff liaison, I think is how it's referred to,
Mhm.
and then as the chair. And then we had 2 members that are currently on the board who are eligible to participate in interviews, both being interviewed and giving interviews. And then Malcolm had indicated that he was available. And so we, in order to get them done in one sitting, it ended up being 2 days, but we used who we had available. And again, it doesn't matter who sits in on it, because we can only ask these questions.
Well, to me, it matters who sits in on it. And it does say here, the board will conduct interviews. And I am incredibly available. I'm retired.
Okay.
I'm
So we are-
available, so I'm just saying, I see a problem here. Maybe we need to take this offline with council or something, but This is the second time this has happened where I was not informed, not aware. It says board will conduct interviews. I'm on the board. I wasn't part of conducting interviews. I don't know where we go from here, but I'm calling this out that I believe this is a big problem.
Okay, so we have two options, is that the entire board would do the interview or a group of people.
A nominating committee.
And so we go with that, and we always have. The airport is always, we've never as a board interviewed everybody. I'm coming up on 10 years, and it was one-on-one, two-on-one interview, and then your next interview is with city council, and then they make the decision. Normally, there's more people applying. You've got X number of people applying for a finite number of seats. This is, I think, the first time we've had this happen where our number matched after Mr. Wimmert dropped out. So, and the interviews are available if you want to look at those. And she needs those from you, Levi, though, because I couldn't, since I didn't initiate meetings, you saved them. So they do need those, and you're welcome to look at those and see if you see anything and if you want to take it further. And then also, if we have a mid-year or next year, we would know now that you're interested in doing it. So that's also good information. I appreciate that. On that note, then, are there any other questions or discussion on before we vote?
Well, I don't know who I'm voting on. Well, I guess I gotta review the tapes and look at the interviews.
Sorry, there were 4 applicants. 1 dropped out. We have 3 people left: Tara Menza, Dan Meester, and Jeremy Kornreich, who's actually sitting right out there and has been attending our meetings and trying to get on the board for a while. But our 4th candidate dropped out, and so we have 3 candidates to propose for 3 positions that are open, and 2 of them are renewing, so they're sitting beside you here.
I understand what you're saying. I'm just saying, once again, I'm sitting here being asked to vote on something, and I'm not real clear on what I'm voting on. I don't know. I know you guys. I don't know this person, so I don't know where we go from here. But I guess I have to vote no, or take some time to look at the tapes, because that's the problem here. It's not a transparent process, and that's a problem when you're not transparent and share what's going on. So I don't feel qualified to vote on this.
Okay, I guess if we had 5 candidates for 3 spots, I could get that, but we have 3 openings and 3 candidates, and 2 of them are knowns. And we don't, prior to me being chair, I think maybe as vice chair a few times I participated in the interviews, but we trusted the people who did them to follow this guideline, because we are required to follow this. And so you don't stray from this, and you use the rating system. So it is for that reason, so that you get a consistent result. I'm going to go. I just got you. Okay. Try again. There we go.
I just wanted to say thank you for the people that applied, and thank you, Board Member Shook.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, one clarification, one comment, or maybe 2 clarifications. One, could you repeat the names of who were part of the the interviewing committee?
The interviewers were Levi Brown, me, Tara Menza, Dan Meester, Malcolm, and I feel like there was somebody.
These are the people who were doing the interviewing of the applicants.
Yeah, and we follow this guideline that the city gives us. And Levi had 2 people come to his office to sit with him in the interview, because they didn't have connectivity, and recorded them on Teams per our requirements.
So once again, Levi, you, Dan Meester, Tara Menza, and who else?
Malcolm.
Malcolm were part of those who interviewed the candidates who
Yes.
applied.
Mhm.
And remind me again, the candidates that applied were?
Tara Menza, Dan Meester, Jeremy Kornreich, and David Wimmert.
Okay, thank you. The second clarification I wanted to offer was, might be worthwhile for staff to circle up with maybe the clerk's office on a few things, because having seen how some other commissions do it, to board member Schilling's point, there's what's the process and what's the inclusivity of the process. and who's even knows about opportunities to participate. I think from my experience serving on the Planning and Zoning Commission previously, that was an opportunity that was shared to all of the members to express their availability. Then there were some decisions that had to be made as to like who could actually participate in that, but that was offered to the entire commission.
I think that's part of the time constraint that we met, was that we got the packet and the candidates after our last meeting and before, but in this.
Sure, I'm not speaking exactly to that
was
process, but there is no, I mean, you don't have to start scheduling that after the packets are received, for instance. That could be scheduled in advance based on people's availability.
Yes, and if they've expressed.
So I
interest,
just
yeah.
wanted to share how I've seen it done on other commissions as well. Yeah, so I just wanted to offer those
Thank you.
points. Yes, thank you.
Appreciate it.
So are we at the point where it says final recommendations will be made by the board as a whole? Is that where we are with this motion?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, let me come this way. I think I'm going to go to Tara.
I can appreciate Board Member Schilling's comments, because I would want to also be part of the interviews, which is why I reached out to you and asked, because I was being interviewed and I was like, oh, hey, are there interviews that I can partake in? So I did a little bit of my own outreach, but I did not know the process either. And I think knowing that it is a nomination committee process, that helps me understand that, okay, there's just a group of people who do it. What I think would help me feel better if I were in Member Schilling's spot would be for, in the future, if you continue the nominating committee process, to let the rest of the board know. Obviously, you guys know us, but Jeremy, give us some background on Jeremy and why he's being recommended. I think that would be helpful for the ones who were not part of the nominating committee in interviewing Jeremy.
So there was a nominating committee made or not? Because I'm reading.
Not by a declaration or motion or anything.
Okay.
So just as a point of information, there was some fumbling in our applications. So Tara and I renewed our interest in fill out an application, and suddenly we were told that we were going to be interviewed for, I think it was a senior housing division or something like that. And this ended up being like a Thursday, and I think we had 2 days, literally, before we were being interviewed. So there was, again, some sort of organizational mess there, but I don't know how to address anything else. It's just one of those things that kind of screwed up. So we actually had to call and make sure that we were on the list for the advisory board as opposed to senior housing, whatever it was.
Yeah, because they weren't, they didn't show up in our packet, and we knew they intended to seek renewal. And that's when that was discovered, that they were sent to the wrong place to apply. And then in the essence of time, they are still sitting board members and can be a part of the interview process. But a good note, and we did have the mid-year last year, and Jeremy applied and was interviewed at that time for the mid-year position, and then reinstated his application. And again, we had 3 knowns by that time, pretty much. And I don't remember far back, I wasn't ever on anything with who got on the board or not. We just showed up and somebody else had done the work, and there were X number of recommendations for X number of seats, and then it goes over to council because they have the final say. So,
Madam Chair, one way that you can ensure that the letter of the nomination committee idea is met is that when you convene a new board, so you're going to have some new board members here coming up, once you convene that board, go ahead and create a nominating committee at that time. And then those are the folks that will interview folks each time that there's an opening. But that's one way to be able to ensure that the nominating committee comes from the board. The board chooses who that is, and then you're able to just move with ease every time that there's a vacancy that needs to be interviewed.
That's good. Good point. Thank you.
Is it worthwhile to maybe ask Jeremy to step up and, for Mr. Schilling's, and he's, I don't know if that's relevant, but if he would like to say a few words, I don't know.
I appreciate that suggestion. It is not typical. They are requested to attend the meetings of the boards they're applying to, so the fact that he's been coming is a testament to that. We have this rubric that we use, and Jeremy scored on the rubric consistently with his last interview that he has been on the airport. He's he is a licensed pilot, not currently flying. The other thing Jeremy did was wrangle the photographers for the air show, and he volunteered to do that, and that's how I actually met Jeremy the first time. Was he was on the air show committee and had expressed interest. He does live right under the pattern. That's part of his interest in being there. Understands the airport operations, does photography, so he's on other airports doing that. Doesn't conduct, or the business he conducts with the airport is with the food truck and Elite. He did train at Aerosphere when he got his license. He would consider himself a user of the airport, but not a tenant or investor. He can commit to the second Thursday of the month. His vision is to have it be livable, diverse, have a business mix, and that the airport have sustainable growth, and that we, trying to read the rest of my notes, that we would expand, although extending the runway not to the degree that was in the 2012 plan. And then he's looking to look beyond pilots and flight schools. The airport exists within the community, and he's active in the community and would like to participate in this, and especially given where he lives. He's right under the pattern, just south of the airport. And he said the airport is really important for the impact. It's not black and white solutions, and that we need to seek compromise. So those were some of his answers on this interview. And then his prior interview was probably pretty similar. He is retired and comes to the airport both as a photographer and enjoys the airport and frequents the restaurant. And then our existing members, if you don't know where they stand on stuff by this time.
Can I make a motion to accept the 3 applicants for the next year's term?
Yes, I accept that. I think we had a motion up. It was seconded, so at this point, we've had discussion, so let's go ahead and vote. All in favor of affirming Tara Menza, Dan Meester, and Jeremy Kornreich for our 3 open positions beginning January 2026, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay.
Can I abstain? Is that a way to do that?
Yeah.
I'd like to just abstain.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, I think it should be pretty.
Just out of principle. I don't have anything against anybody here. It just, I don't think the process was very good. And I want to be sure that we're clear that Chairperson Jordan did not reach out to.
There's no discussion on a vote.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I'll abstain.
Okay. Noted that Member Schilling abstains from voting, and all other voted in favor of affirming 2 city council. So we're just recommending them up for the city council interviews. Thank you. And well noted, and this is a very good thing to bring up in January, that we can go ahead and get that piece of business taken care of and have a list, and then as you go through the list, who's available versus who's not at that time, because that hopefully won't be until October of next year. Last item was historic preservation and proclamation for the airport's 80th anniversary. I submitted a proclamation for the anniversary of the airport that would be read at council, and I haven't heard anything back. It would be about 30 days since I submitted it, so I don't know if it's on the agenda to be read or not. And then, do you know something?
I'll check.
Okay, thank you. And then historic preservation, I pulled the paperwork. It's really more about architectural preservation. So let's all just have a really good laugh for a second about that. And then, but it's historical significance and things like that. So I haven't taken it any further. It is a pretty simple 2-page form, and it's asking, what makes this space special, and why are you applying for this? Again, it would be more attached to a building, which would probably be Levi's office, or maybe the old tower or something, I don't know. So I kind of stalled on that one and am waiting. But that was something that was recommended to seek historic preservation for the airport because of its age at this point. So that one's just kind of on hold, and I'll keep that one on my list unless somebody else wants to adopt it for our action items. Next up is our final public invited to be heard. You don't need to have signed up. If you have something you'd like to say, please come forward, state your name and address, and you've got 5 minutes. Direct your comments directly to the board. First call. Here we go.
There we go. Chair Member Jordan, members of the board, Scott Storr, 229 Grant Street. Hey, I've heard a lot of negative stuff about the airport over the last couple of weeks. I'm going to stand up for the airport. I'm going to ask everybody that's critical of the airport to become more involved and look at the city website. We got people saying the airport's not, the city's not investing in the airport. You can go to the city's website and go to the capital improvement, the CIP portion of it for 2026 through 2030. Taxiway Alpha is on there. That's one that just got, that's in process. It gives you a little map of where these things are happening. Did anybody know that the airport's part of a program that's going to get an electric vehicle charging station out at the airport over by Levi's office? That's part of a greater program that's going to put, 4 charging stations throughout the city? The drainage program. Prior to any structure being built on the south side of the airport, drainage improvements must be made. This is money that the city is investing in the airport. So to hear some people come up here at this public invited to be heard and publicly invited to be heard at council and everything and bash the city for not investing in the airport, they really don't know what they're talking about because the city is doing it. Now, yeah, we're playing catch up because we're really doing maintenance items for most of our grant funding and stuff. And we're not doing like forward thinking capital improvements, but we can't even afford the matching 5% grant funds for these maintenance projects. And you guys are fighting against a landing fee, which is a potential revenue source for the airport that gets the ball rolling. And if you guys got those other ideas that you want to do and implement and charge hangar fees at a higher rate and make the people that live here freaking pay for it, so be it. You want to double the fuel taxes, so be it. But until that time, don't do nothing. Adopt the landing fees and then adjust them later. Talked about an LED runway project. I'm sure you got a project manager on this thing. Just be aware that LEDs don't create the heat that the incandescents do, and you don't want to have a light problem in the middle of a winter storm. They will not melt, the lights will not melt the snow. So understand what you're installing. Don't create a problem. Thanks.
Thank you. Do I have anybody else who'd like to speak? Excuse me. Seeing none, I will close the public invited to be heard. We're up to comments, and I will begin by congratulating Matthew Popkin on his election to the Ward 2 representative position, and presume you will remain our liaison to the board given the airport is in your ward. And so congratulations. And then I know I've asked for a couple of things The next would be the December 11th meeting. I won't be here, and Board Member Shook may or may not be here. It sounds like at this point we'll proceed with plan to a December 11th board meeting, and Mr. Meester will run that. And then if you have any kind of conflicts for the 11th, please either let me know or let Dan know that you won't be available, so he knows if we're going to have a quorum or not. And then, depending on what I'm in the middle of, I'll jump in on YouTube or something and watch, but I'll be hopefully not bungee jumping in New Zealand, but something else. Skydiving. I'm going to be skydiving there. And then I do want to seek input from Tara about Sundance, because she has been attending all the Sundance meetings that have been being held, and has really taken the lead, thankfully, to be at those, because they're always in the morning on a day I can't go, and she's been going to those and keeping track. So I'll go to you first. How's that?
Thank you. So there's a lot that we can't do because it's up to council, but there's also a lot that we can do. So I do want to start with some concerns about the landing fees, specific related to what they actually, how to pay for them, what they do. So like landing fees, they're probably going to be captured by a camera. Is there a privacy policy to that? Do landing fees apply to gliders? Some additional questions about landing fees are, there was a discussion about Aspen landing fees, and looking at their 2025 airport rates and charges, it says locally based GA, none. So Aspen doesn't even have landing fees for local based GA. I do think that we should add some items for action items 2026 maybe, since it sounds like there might be some issues. And Madam Chair, get your hand ready to write. So since we can't do much, we can do a lot of letters. So I think that we should explore maybe doing like a tri-seal letter with the surrounding communities that do have an airport, such as Broomfield, Erie, to the FAA to try and get some more information about the sound. Maybe do a sound study. I do know that there's something related to sound at Rocky Mountain Metro, so just interesting. Maybe a letter to Congressman Nagoose, who is the congressman for this area, to increase FAA funding for our airport. Even a letter to our state representative, McCormick, and state senator Katie Wallace to increase state funding for our airports. And then lastly, just on those landing fees, I don't know, it's just the cost to set it up, to have a fee, but then we also have to pay for a fee for the fee. How funny is that? So I think that we should just continue to write to City Council and express the board's decision each time it votes on what it feels is appropriate for the airport to charge fees. That's all I have.
Thank you. The sound study is a part 150. Did I get that right, Levi? It's a part 150. And it's...
There we go. The first incarnation in Illinois State would be theoretically a part 50.
Six figures.
That's a conversation for a whole airport advisory board in itself.
Yeah.
That's why it's tri-seal.
Yeah.
3 cities pay for it.
Right. That, yeah. But then it will only study one airport. So which one gets it?
Not necessarily.
They do the contours. So look at Centennial. They've got all their stuff is up, and theirs is done. Metro's in the middle of theirs, I think. I don't think theirs is complete yet, but Centennial's is done, and it's all up, and you can see all the contours. But it's pretty much what you would expect for pattern activity and things going on.
Oh, okay, thanks. Yes, so Sarah Leonard at Visit Longmont has been partnering up with Charlene from Visit Boulder to just get ready for Sundance. And Sarah has done a great job rallying the businesses in Longmont. So there's been meetings where she's specifically brought in the small businesses, she's brought in the hoteliers and lodging, and then she's brought in transportation. And I attended the transportation meeting, and there were people there who were from car services, who had, party buses. Obviously, I was there to talk about the airport. We are going to get overflow from Sundance. We won't get the big jets because we don't have the runway or the space to put them. Those will go to Rocky Mountain, BJC, or probably Fort Collins. That we could get some of the smaller jets that could land on our runway. My concern is where are we going to market to put them? And then obviously our lovely FBO is the first thing they're going to see. So we talked about those things, and then like how to market our airport, and then how to get people from the airport to their destinations. People might want to stay in Boulder. They might want to stay in Longmont. And we've talked about buses that would go to from different areas in Longmont to the showings, from the hotels to Boulder in the showings. Longmont, from what I understand, is not going to have any showings. This is going to be very Boulder-centric for the first couple of years. And so there's going to be staff for Sundance that needs to be lodged. There's going to be, I think there was a number of 130,000 people that attend this 2-week Sundance Festival, but they don't attend all at once. It is sort of an ebbs and flows type thing. So there will be people coming and going. They stay for a couple of days and see what they want to see, and then they leave. So the idea is to have Longmont marketed for people to come and stay here as well. Come and see how cool Longmont is, come and see all of the fun things that we have to offer, stay a couple extra days and spend some more time in Longmont. Go hike the Rocky Mountain National Parks, go snowshoeing, go skiing, although I did hear that a lot of the people who frequent Park City don't stay and ski. So what else can Longmont offer? We could do some sightseeing flights. We could do some fun little things out of the airport, a destination to somewhere else in the area. The things that we've also talked about are how to market ourselves. Speaking specifically about the airport, do we want to partner with some hoteliers and try to get people from the airport to the hotel? Do we want to think about having some information on the airport's website? So working with the city on, capturing the marketing, the branding that the Visit Longmont is trying to use. And we're trying to use it throughout the city with all the different small businesses to market the Sundance crowd so that they want to come to Longmont. All of our marketing is, hopefully going to be the same so that we're capturing it for everyone in Longmont. Advertising, where are we going to put these airplanes that come? So those are the things that we kind of all need to be thinking about as an airport board. How can we market to the public, here, come to Longmont. We can get you from point A to point B. This is where you can put your airplane. This is a list of all our fabulous restaurants that we have in Longmont. These are some fun things that you can do. And this is where you can stay. And we hope you stay for longer so that you can enjoy our town and spend your money here. I do believe at the State of the City, I don't know how many of you saw that, but tourism makes up if we didn't have the tourism, we would have to spend an extra $7,000 per household. So the tourism in Longmont is wonderful, and we can capture the Sundance crowd, especially the overflow, the staff, the volunteers, and then the people who come to watch it. So I am trying to make sure that the airport has a voice when it comes to the transportation piece, and I would love to hear some ideas or give me some feedback on what you would like to see advertised, how we can work with transportation companies, with hoteliers, and then even how we can create maybe a list on our website of people who say they own hangars and they say, hey, you know what, I can put my airplane somewhere else for these 2 weeks and my hangar is available. And then we let people know, that the public, hey, we have room for your airplane. We do like an Airbnb for the airport, for our airplanes. So that's kind of the things that I'm trying to think about. And so it would be nice to be able to capture some of that from our hangar owners. But that's pretty much all I have, unless you guys have questions.
Thank you. And anybody who wants to participate in that, Dr. Grunsfeld also went to some of those first meetings with Tara and was participating in that as well. So anybody who has an interest in that, they tend to be during the week, like 8, 9, 10 in the morning. And I'm not sure what the next topic is or if they've gone through all the topics.
I don't know what the next topic is either. And for those of you who haven't heard, Sarah is now moving to Estes, and she's going to run their tourism up there. And not to my knowledge have we hired somebody here. I just saw the advertisement for the position. So hopefully that person will take it over. And I would like for us to be able to talk to, the city about how we can market the airport and get that on the advertising and marketing piece of the Sundance Festival.
To that point, the airport hosted the transportation discussion. Levi and Elite cleaned out and had airplanes there, and it was a beautiful space. And there were probably 30 people at that meeting. And a couple of interesting things that came out of that was that the project down the diagonal will not be done. It's about 6 months behind at this point, it looks like. CDOT will suspend construction for...
And that was just an idea
An
to do.
idea? Okay, they talked about doing that.
Yeah,
And
Jen is here.
The weeks of Sundance are the last 2 weeks of January 2027. So just to clarify, it is in the middle of winter for us.
Hi, I'm Jen Uten, and we haven't all met, but I'm the new Assistant City Manager for External Services and replacing Joni Marsh.
We'll put her phone number in the guide, I promise.
We'll put my phone number in there. So I don't want to leave anybody with a false expectation that CDOT would suspend their work. There's a number of projects that are ongoing, including on the diagonal. The 119 and Hoover intersection will also be under construction. There's also some work that's happening on I-25. So it's something that we've brought up to CDOT, but not necessarily something that is going to happen. There is a regional transportation conversation that hasn't been scheduled, but the city of Boulder has reached out to us, and so we will get to be part of those conversations as they're moving forward. I think that may be more focused on moving volunteers and some of those kinds of things on the front end, but certainly happy to report back here either in person or through Levi about those efforts. And we have an internal conversation that's happening related to Sundance and just understanding what are the pieces that we need to be aware of. So also working with our partners with Visit Longmont and of course the DDA. So happy to report out more information. I just didn't want to leave people with the impression that CDOT was going to suspend the construction because it's something we flagged for them, but I don't know that they will.
And at that meeting, RTD didn't have any plans, and so it's still really, we're in that figuring it out stage. And then we did get a little bit of a break with Paul Newman or Robert Redford's death. So they're very hyper-focused on their 2026 festival. And I know they're already putting in the high-speed fiber up at Chautauqua, so Boulder's underway. You can see things happening around it. And again, our interest is in the transportation piece, and then that ties in with lodging, because during the air show, I get a rate from Candlewood Suites. They give us a preferred rate for our performers and our guests, and we're able to pass that rate on, and then it persists for the year, so it's available to pilots all the time to go to that hotel. And we aren't really pushing a rental car which normally you'd push a rental car option. That is not something we're promoting. It's a shared ride, buses, vans, other forms of transportation. So we don't, because there's not going to be any place to park in Boulder. We all know that.
Well-
We should have, probably have for skydiving.
So the gentleman who owned Cobalt Executive Transportation wanted to sort of partner with us about black car service because there is still a little bit of an opportunity for us to bring in some of the more expensive airplanes and have a black car service available for those folks who would prefer to keep their airplanes land in Longmont and keep their aircraft in Longmont, so it's a little bit closer. And because we do have instrument capabilities at our airport, if the weather is bad, they wouldn't land in Boulder, they would land in Longmont. So they have reached out and would like to partner. I don't necessarily think it would be us. I think it would be the FBO, but it's just basically having those conversations and around Sundance and how we can help support the transportation piece of it and generate some revenue for the airport and Longmont. And then really quickly, I wanted to let the board know that I have been speaking with Levi about getting on the Longmont Chamber of Commerce's books to do a chamber after hours event at the airport. And so we have that scheduled for May. And I think it's going to be a great opportunity to showcase the airport, to give our businesses who attend the chamber after hours event sort of a little top level overview of the airport, what it can do, what it can provide, maybe some spaces for future development. Maybe some businesses might want to look for a new spot to have their business. But I thought it would kind of be a really good test run for us to at some point bring in the community for some sort of a community open house at the airport. But I'm really excited about working with Levi and the chamber to plan this after hours because yes, some of our facilities are a little outdated, but that view is unbelievable. And I think once we get people out there and seeing how great our airport is in that sort of sense and what we can do for the community and what we have done for the community, I'm hoping to bring some of that education back into the community by just doing stuff like that. So.
Thank you, Tara, for working on that, and thanks again for going to Sundance. And if anybody is interested and available to go to any of those meetings, let Tara know. And next, I'm going to call on Malcolm.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, it's kind of it's for Councilman Popkins and for Sandy. So we have the same people that come to us every month and say, you can fix the airport by landing fees. You can fix the airport by landing fees. And they don't really use the airport. And so today I actually had the opportunity to speak with Beth Roberts, who is the administrative assistant at the Rio Vista Airport. And they used to have landing fees. And her comment to me was as followed. Rio Vista tried landing fees. Most people either avoided the airport, which we've talked about, or refused to pay. The amount of work to recoup landing fees cost more than we actually ever made off of any of the landing fees that we tried sending out. Our landing fees did not significantly impact our budget or make a dent in any significant way towards our budget. But yet the public keeps telling us, oh yeah, just throw landing fees on and we'll just make all this money. And here's somebody from an airport that does this, and it is an admin that knows what they're talking about, that says it didn't help. They actually removed it, and by removing landing fees and encouraging pilots and businesses and other services, they'll contribute more to the bottom line and get more money at the airport. So I would love to see Councilman Popkins, you go to the city council and say, maybe this landing fee thing isn't all it's cracked up to be. We have people that are telling you it's a good idea, but those people are the ones that don't even use the airport. They don't really have an understanding of finances or what that means. And as this person came from the airport and works there and says, we've tried this, I'm telling you it does not work. And when you have a first case person that says it doesn't work, that says to me a whole lot versus just saying, oh, we can throw some landing fees on there and it'll make you a lot of money. she said, we even tried this, and we found that it was more trouble than it was worth to even do. And that's kind of what other people had said, that, to recoup the fees are going to cost a whole lot of money. It isn't just a free gimme, that they'll just kind of do this for free out of the goodness of their hearts. So I'd like to see ways to make it easier to get into the airport, and other ways to promote businesses at the airport versus just slapping fees on the airport. So that's what I have.
Thank you, Malcolm. Thanks for doing that work. Rio Vista, California.
Rio Vista, California.
Yeah, okay,
Yep.
so that's one that I had looked into a while back, that they had moved through an ordinance, added landing fees, and then 9 months later moved through an ordinance to rescind them. So it is interesting to know what motivated them to make that change. And then, were there other airports?
I am talking to Sarah. There was one. What was it? There was one that you mentioned, and there's three that have done it. Rio Vista, and then there's one, Capital City, Pennsylvania, and there's one other one I can't remember off the top of my head. But I did reach out to all three, and I did get a response from one. I'm waiting for responses from the others about why they've done it and what they've done to kind of recoup those costs. Kind of see what go from there.
Appreciate you doing that work. Thank you. Mr. Meester?
I'm good.
All right. Did you have your letter? Mr. Schick?
So Kyle Foley, in his presentation, requested maybe we look at suggesting a 120-day freeze on implementing any landing fees, so his study could maybe make a recommendation or something. So I think that's, with information that we just heard, I think that might be a good thing to do. So if we can make a motion to suggest a 90-day, 120-day freeze before the city council implements anything?
Is that a motion?
Yes.
We're kind of out of the agenda. We're kind of out of the agenda, and plus I would look at my two city references here. We can, when council asks us, we can make recommendations, and I don't know that, we might be too late to make that ask, but public can come speak Tuesday and make that ask at that time.
Yeah. I do think that, they look to the board for advice, so if you made a motion with additional information for them to consider, we could certainly give it to them, I would say. And you have to understand, they've passed it on first reading, they haven't passed it on second reading. That's what's happening on the 18th. But I would say I would not be so strict as to say you could not.
That was me doing that.
Yeah, I think from a parliamentary procedure standpoint, you can technically you make a motion to adjourn a meeting too. The motions are valid throughout. It would be atypical to do it at this part of the agenda. That said, I might be able to solve this for everyone here and say, I'm here to understand the board's discussion and the comments that are made here and represent that back to City Council. I think I have heard that interest, and I can express that next week. And
Okay.
if you want to formally take a motion, you can. The City Council has received multiple statements from this group on landing fees from this advisory board. So your call if you think that would be a meaningful substantive addition that you would like to add.
Well, with board member Malcolm's information, I think that's important, where it's been tried and didn't work. Factual. So I think that's something maybe the rest of the council needs to hear. I know it's only one airport, but
Yeah, and that is you have the pleasure of spending your evenings with us to get this information. So
Always.
I think that would be the most expedient way for Councilmember Popkin to weigh in the discussion. And potentially.
You are all welcome to make a motion and take a vote. If you would like to provide an additional recommendation or advisory opinion to council, I can also try to capture this discussion in its spirit.
I think it's
your
more
call how you want to
effective.
handle that.
Yeah, I think it's more effective, but we can also make a motion as well. But I do think that he's heard everything and can relay that. That's part of the purpose of the liaison, is to represent us at council.
You turned mine on. But I.
There we go. Councilman Pocket, the issue I have is that the city kept saying, the airport didn't provide suggestions. The airport didn't provide suggestions. But as Board Member Shook said, we did. We wrote a letter, and that's what people keep also referring to as the alleged cost of this. I don't know how clear the city wants us to be on this, but we have said time and time and again that a majority of the board is against the landing fees.
A point of order, there is a motion on the table. I'll second it.
Okay, it's seconded.
Okay, now this is a discussion.
There we go.
So for the record, Member Shook moved that we ask council to take a 120-day pause on the landing fee ordinance for the purpose of the Airport Authority study. Seconded by Member Menza. Had some discussion?
Yeah, some discussion. So we are very clear. We have offered solutions, and it still sounds like the city is saying the solutions aren't good enough. We need more. And this board has done as much as it can in its legal authority to give you those solutions, to give you those possibilities. Even as today, talking about rates studies. So I don't know. Can you provide some guidance on what the city is wanting us to do?
I mean, this is, objectively speaking, procedurally, like, this is not a Q&A with me right now. I am a liaison to the board. There is a motion in a second. You guys are discussing that motion. Any of the public record discussions of what city council has asked for or received is very much in the public record. So I am not going to engage right now in a back and forth with you, because that's been provided to city council, and city council has asked questions, perhaps maybe to your dismay, but there is a current motion and discussion, and that's what the discussion is focused on right now. Sorry.
So sorry. Go ahead.
So at the last board meeting, I asked for facts and data, and I was invited to go look it up. And so the RFIs clearly state that there's no cost to collect landing fees, no cost, goose egg, to collect landing fees. I've spoken to 3 airport managers as well, no cost to collect landing fees. So it's a zero cost thing. Sandy, I hope, will be weighing in sooner or later to show what she's finding on what the costs are to collect landing fees. But those are the facts. Zero cost to collect landing fees.
And I'd be happy to clarify, Madam Chair, if you would like. So a zero-cost contract is one in which the company collects the fees and then takes a portion off the top. So they don't invoice the city, they take the portion off the top. So it's not that they don't make any money, it's that they take money, but they take it off of the top of the revenues based on whatever the contract is. So it's a zero cost back to the city because you're gathering revenues, but then they do take money off the top of that revenue stream. So everyone's right. It's zero cost, plus it's also no money. So that's how a zero cost contract works.
And they provide the equipment? Okay.
So, point of clarification. Thanks. So possibly as a point of parliamentary procedure here, there's a motion and a second on a specific topic here. This is not, from what I understand from the spirit of your motion, it is not to reopen the landing fees discussion, which this board has weighed in on multiple times. I would strongly encourage members, especially given the hour that it is and that is past final public invited to be heard in our agenda, to focus on this one topic and not reopen a different topic based on various perspectives you may hold as an individual.
I know you can't make a motion, but I'll second that.
And the topic was to put a pause on this, but I mean, what are we putting a pause on if we don't know what we're doing? Like, Board Member Schilling, you said that you saw the RFIs, but according to Assistant City Manager, the bids are sealed. So I don't know how you saw the RFIs. Either way.
Melanie.
I spoke to the airports, the airport managers that do this.
Other airports?
I spoke personally with 3 airports, and I spoke to the company that does the implementation. So, and there's single digit to low double digit costs. So it is very inexpensive to collect them, and they do it all the time.
So I seconded the motion because I think that Councilmember Popkin can elaborate on the board's discussion after they get the presentation from Assistant City Manager Cedar and Levi. And I think he is able to elaborate our discussion and what we have talked about as far as the airport authority possibility. I also feel like that as an advisory board, we should take a position on this, and our position will be on record. So I think the motion should have been, made and seconded, and I'm all for it because I think this is what our board is doing, is providing that advisory piece of it. So I would like to call the question.
All right, seeing no more discussion, let us vote on if we, as a board, would like to request a 120-day freeze on airport decisions to allow time for the airport authority to investigate and report back. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say nay.
Nay.
Okay, thank you. That is passes with Member Schilling nay. Thank you. We've had some good discussion, and we've got a lot of things to work on just on a regular agenda, and landing fees has definitely taken a lot of our time and energy, for sure. So if you can be at the city council meeting on Tuesday, and you could represent yourself, and not speaking on behalf of the board, Levi will speak on behalf of the airport, and I'd like to hear from Mr. Popkin.
Thank you. Didn't want to interrupt those other discussions there. Just a couple of final comments as we wrap up here. First, I just want to say I appreciate the board's feedback on a number of topics, and also thank staff for the increasingly more robust packets that you've all received. I think that's been a push from many members, myself included, over the past 6 months. We're starting to see the fruits of that labor because I am also hearing a higher caliber of discussion come out. I know that there's independent research that people are bringing to the table too, but the combination of that, I think, is probably likely resulting in a stronger discussion. So I appreciate that, and appreciate the time that you all spend reading through this 20 to 40 page packets sometimes. So thank you. Overall, a more informed board is a more helpful board. So appreciate that. Building on the last discussion, without going to the merits of the topic, I do want to say, I very much view my role in this capacity as reporting back to City Council. Some of you may have seen that live or on the recording just, a week ago for the landing fees discussion. The main things that I try to highlight when I'm doing that are the majority perspective, any substantive minority perspectives, and noting that those were in the minority. and then try to objectively describe the process and discussion from the board to the extent relevant, as well as flag information that the board did or didn't have, which I know, which I explicitly did share last week with council, that there was information that the board did not receive until in the moment. And I thought that that was relevant for any kind of advisory situation. So wanted to make sure my fellow council members had that context if they did not choose to tune into the 3-hour and 45-minute meeting that we all had. If you have questions, concerns, or suggestions for how I can best represent the board, feel free to talk to me individually if you'd like. I'll gladly take that feedback. Melinda and I chat as well. Sorry, Madam Chair, and I talk as well from time to time about that too. And then just building on what our chair said before, the proposal to establish landing fees is on second reading for this coming Tuesday, November 18th. There is not currently any specific fee amount in that ordinance. This would be an authorizing or establishing ordinance if passed. At this point, there would be a public hearing for that, which would be different from public invited to be heard, because there's a formal decision happening. So just wanted to make sure the board and the public is aware of that process at this point. If it passes, then that's approved. There's not like a third or fourth reading in that situation. If it doesn't pass, then it's not approved, obviously. There are two other notes I just wanted to offer here, kind of reflecting on some of the discussion today. Not on landing fees. Overall, the Airport Advisory Board advises City Council, and I want to strongly stress that the board should not be writing to representatives on behalf of the board, but should be advising City Council to direct, to either direct staff or reach out and advocate to their representatives. So please keep that in mind for any future considerations that you consider. Secondly, I'd like to encourage all board members to keep in mind constructive comments and constructive feedback, whether it's to staff, to other board members, to myself, or to others, including public presenters. Please keep that in mind as you navigate your approach here, as you are an extension of City Council. And then last but certainly not least, I do appreciate the discussion today on the interview process. And I do want to stress, regardless of your position on that it's really important that each board consider who's included in that process and the perception of who's included in that process and who conducts the interviews. That also matters as well. I think this board has consistently asked for more information in general on substantive topics. I don't think it is out of place to ask for more information when you're considering future members of the board as well. And I'd really encourage that both staff and the board consider the interview processes in the future, and feel free to talk to the clerk's office or other folks in the city who have been running this in other board contexts as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no one else. Do you have anything you'd like to report, Sandy?
I only just wanted to clarify one kind of the next step. So if the city council were to approve the landing fees on second reading, which codifies the landing fees, then we would have to still figure out the methodology for what the charges would look like. And then that has to actually come back to the Airport Advisory Board again as part of the changes to your rates and charges, and be posted publicly for 30 days. So it doesn't, things can't just happen immediately. There's in the code, there's a requirement that whatever the fee methodology is comes back to this group and is posted for 30 days on the website. I also did find a small rates and charges, like a flyer, like a promotional flyer on the airport website, but that's not what we need. So Levi is going to work with communications as soon as he's back, and we'll make sure that the full document is posted on the website. My apologies for it not being there.
And my apology for not going over to Levi because he's not in his chair. Levi, what would you like to say?
I'm good, thank you.
Sorry, I know you guys want to go home, but since Assistant City Manager Cedar brought it up, if it passes on second reading and we've done the RFI, do we have a specific organization that we're going with? Do we already know that is who that is because we've gotten all the information we needed, or is there an RFP that still needs to go out?
So there were two respondents, there were three respondents to the RFI, and one of them has since dropped out of the process. So there are two today. What that then means is that we can put out a statement for qualifications. Purchasing recommends that if we did move forward with landing fees and needed to procure a company to do so, that we do a request for qualifications, which we think they probably would both pass, and then it really is more of a quote kind of situation. So it does have to go through another purchasing process for us to determine which of the two would be the successful bidder.
Okay, all right, thanks. And then it's still go through the 30 days, and then the FAA, at some point, I understand,
FAA
has
needs
to
to
weigh
be
in.
connected right in between there. So
Okay.
the council hopefully would, if they pass the landing fees, give us direction on methodology. We would take that methodology and consult with the FAA, bring it back to you, post it for 30 days, and then it goes back to the council after that.
Okay, thanks. Thank you as well for being here. I didn't say that earlier, but it is super helpful to have you here. And Councilmember Popkin, I do notice you giving very accurate information to council back from Airport Board, and I certainly appreciate that.
Echo that, and yes, it is good to have you here and get answers from the source and clarification on some things as well. Thank you. I believe that ends comments. I will make a motion that we adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
There we go. Look at that. Any opposed? Nay. We're adjourned. Okay.